Chapter 1209. Unohana Retsu was silent. Soul Society's captains considered Sosuke Aizen as their biggest enemy, but Sosuke Aizen himself regarded them as clowns. They're not even cannon fodder in front of Sosuke Aizen. Dustless looked at them with disdain. These captains who saw Sosuke Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu couldn't even take a single hit from him. The gap between them was like heaven and earth. I just hope that with the help of those people's souls, I can lure out Yawatch behind the scenes. Dustless murmured to himself, lowering his head silently. Boom boom boom. Intense spiritual pressure fluctuations swept across Soul Society. Two violent spiritual pressures collided with each other, causing the sky to creak. Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise. Those who dared to cause trouble near the 4th Division were quite bold, and the scale of their spiritual pressure wasn't weak either. It's Bandai and Ace Kawasaki. Damn it, forget it, Retsu. Just as Unohana was about to rush out of the door, Dustless pulled her back and said with a smile, "We've already killed their captain, Zaraki Kenpachi. Soon, these two fellows will also suffer. As superiors, we need to be considerate of our subordinates. Let's let those two brats enjoy the rest of their lives." Not only Bandai and Ace Kawasaki's spiritual pressure was restless, even the 6th Division's vice-captain, Rinji Ase, Rukia, and Hinamori were reminiscing about their dead captains in their own ways. The entire Soul Society was gloomy, without the slightest bit of fighting spirit. The death of the 4 captains was no less a blow to them than being struck by lightning. At the same time, in another direction, there was a fierce quarrel. "Get out of my way, don't stop me, I'm going to save my friends." In the modern world, in Urahara Kasuke's underground shop, a young man with orange hair and wearing a Shinigami costume shouted, "No matter who my enemy is, I won't leave Inoue alone." The young man was Shinozaki Ichigo, and he was sweating profusely while holding his Zanpakuto. "Yi-san. It seems that this guy is a young man who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Urahara Kasuke turned to Yi, who had turned into a black cat, and said helplessly, "I understand." Yi replied and walked into the room. "With your weak strength, not to mention Sosuke Aizen, even his subordinates aren't someone you can handle. Shinozaki Ichigo. You're too weak." Urahara Kasuke said. Shinozaki Ichigo went silent. Shinozaki Ichigo's Ichigo wasn't a young man. Shinozaki Ichigo lowered his head and clenched his fists, his fingers clenched. He had never felt he was so weak. Kun. Ichigo, Yi-yama, Yi. Ah. Yikikans, of, S Kakeku, S Shino, S was Kiki, S. Her. Him, his, S Isikat, S is he. Broken. His is. It. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Shinozaki Ichigo, who was provoked, roared as he unleashed his Zanpakuto without hesitation and slashed towards 4 Maple Court's Yi. Full of flaws. When he saw this, the pupils of the 4th Courtyard's Yi constricted in disdain. He turned around and kicked. Bang bang bang. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was rushing over, suddenly disappeared. Everyone could only see him disappear in an instant. Caw caw caw. On top of a pile of yellow soil 100 meters away, there was a loud explosion. The miserable Shinozaki Ichigo was stuck in the soil, and he was seeing stars from the kick of the 4 Maple Court. At the same time, in another strange space, compared to the tense atmosphere of the unlucky Kurosaki Ichigo, the atmosphere here was much more relaxed. "How do you feel? Is there anything wrong?" Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai looked at Dustless expectantly, and their eyes sparkled. "There doesn't seem to be anything special." Feeling the waves in his body, Dustless immediately frowned and said, "Could it be that the two of you made a mistake?" "Don't worry, it's fine. We can take it slow." He revealed a gentle smile, indicating that there was no need for them to worry. Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai looked at each other, and they could see the astonishment and abnormality in each other's eyes. In their cognition, Dustless had always been a cruel person who would do anything to achieve his goals. Even Shidoro Senjumaru was ready to be violated by Dustless again. Who would have thought that this guy would just laugh it off? On Dustless's chest, a blue sphere was shining, crystal clear, like a luminous pearl, very dazzling. This was the Hogyoku that Dustless ordered Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai to develop. Now, it had been completed, but the result was disappointing. The Hogyoku in Dustless's body didn't react at all. Maybe you made a mistake in some steps. Dustless said. Urahara Kasuke and Aizen Sosuke also failed. They spent decades or even hundreds of years to complete it. Maybe there was a mistake in the subtle links. Shidoro Senjumaru tapped her chin lightly, but Sayaso Tongsai had a straight face. Obviously, she didn't think so. In short, let's take it slow, don't be too hasty. Dustless was relieved. If the two women spent less than a month to make the Hogyoku, it would be too unfair to their peers, Aizen Sosuke and Urahara Kasuke. Chapter 12:10. Hogyoku took a long time to develop. Aizen and Urahara Kasuke were peerless geniuses, but even with their wisdom, it took them a long time to develop Hogyoku. Furthermore, they were all imperfect existences. Let nature take its course. Wuchen patted the shoulders of the two women, indicating that they didn't have to care about it, but the angry Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru didn't appreciate it. He said with a disgusted face, "Give me your claws, hee." The voice that fell on the edge of his mouth came to an abrupt halt. Shidoro Senjumaru's hair stood on end unconsciously. His entire body stiffened, he shivered and turned his head stiffly. What's with that look? Shidoro Senjumaru was scared. Dustless's green eyes made his soul tremble. He stuttered, "You first, offending the Spirit King is a big problem." Wuchen laughed mischievously. With one sentence, he had sent Shura Thousand Hand Maru to hell. Wuchen's policy had always been to forcefully crush this ice-cold woman until she completely surrendered one day. "Miss Shidoro, aren't you going to leave?" Looking at Zhou Tongxing ambiguously, Wuchen smiled and teased, "Although most scientists don't have the basic understanding of men and women, it's not good for you to watch us make a baby in such a big way, right?" Make a baby. Hearing this, Sayaso Torisei was startled at first. His face was full of doubt. Immediately, he looked at the red face of Shidoro Senjumaru and immediately understood what he meant. He cursed in his heart, shameless. Inside Lossy Temple. On the throne, Aizen Kisuke looked down at the chaotic Minos Grande. His eyes flashed as he used his god-level deduction ability. Arankars, a magical voice spread quietly, and the restless Arankars suddenly became silent. They all looked at Aizen Kisuke, who was standing on the altar. The war with the Shinigami is imminent. I hope everyone can gather their thoughts and defeat the Shinigami. We are invincible in front of us, and the world is under our feet. Aizen Kisuke raised his voice and said. His impassioned tone made everyone's blood boil. Kill all the death gods. Flatten Soul Society. Sweep away the Grim Reapers and eat them all. Seeing this, the corners of Aizen Sosuke's mouth curled into a smug smile. Most people were immersed in the joy of trampling on Soul Society. A bunch of pawns, to think that you can step into heaven. Even if you can really step into heaven with me, it will only be for a short moment. When you fall down, you will be smashed into pieces. Sosuke Aizen smiled and didn't say anything. He just watched this scene quietly. Since these arrogant insects chose to go to hell for him, Aizen naturally wouldn't refuse their good intentions. At this time, Aizen Sosuke frowned. After fusing with Hogyoku, his strength has reached a terrifying level. The entire Hueco Mundo is under his control. He said with interest, seems like someone has already invaded Hueco Mundo. Is it to save that little girl? Aizen Sosuke muttered to himself. He smiled faintly and said to Ulquiorra, Ulquiorra, I will leave that little girl to you. Don't disappoint me. Understood, Aizen-sama. The ones who invaded Hueco Mundo are Kurosaki Ichigo and his people. Even though he lost to 4 Maple Quartz EE, he learned Hueco Mundo's abilities by chance. At the same time, Dustless and the others were about to rush to the modern world when an unimaginable change occurred. Kakaka. The sky above Soul Society cracked open, revealing a deep black cavity. Groups of Jillian stepped out of it, their earth-shattering roars resounding throughout Soul Society. Strange, the first place to make Wang Jian should be the modern world. What are they doing here? Are they planning to directly destroy the Grim Reapers of Soul Society? Dustless speculated Aizen Sosuke's intentions. At the same time, the Grim Reapers of Soul Society began to fight against the Minos. A fierce battle began. Let's go to Hueco Mundo, no, to the modern world, Retsu. The other captains will stay here to deal with the Minos. Dustless ordered briefly. He then left Soul Society with Unohana Retsu and rushed to the modern world. These pawns would be left for the Grim Reapers to deal with. Aizen Sosuke's main goal was Soul King. That was Dustless. Understood, head captain. In the modern world, the sky that was supposed to be cloudless was now filled with dark clouds. An endless stream of greater voids walked out of the black cavities. The greater voids were spitting out red flashes from their mouths as they wantonly destroyed the city. The places that the greater voids walked through were left in a mess. The cities that were perfectly fine were destroyed by the greater voids, turning into debris and ruins. At the same time, a bright white light flashed in the sky. Dustless and the others walked out of the world-crossing gate. That brat Aizen Sosuke doesn't seem to be here. Dustless muttered after seeing the entire world. There was no sign of Aizen Sosuke, only a group of Jillian. How strange. What does Sosuke Aizen mean by this? Looking at the mess below, Dustless couldn't help but frown. After searching for a long time, let alone Sosuke Aizen, there wasn't even a trace of the Minos of Hueco Mundo. There was only a group of Jillian. There was no Vasto Lord or Ajuchas. This scene stunned everyone. Chapter 12:11. The modern realm had turned into a wasteland with black smoke rising from it. Mere humans had no power to fight back in front of Jillian. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the air. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked at the blue arrows coming from afar. A cold light flashed by the corner of his mouth. You guys go to Soul Society first. We might have been tricked by Aizen Sosuke. He might have turned around and attacked Soul Society. Unohana Retsu turned around and said. But you, Unohana Retsu frowned and looked at the arrows coming from afar. Be careful. You're still alive after so many years. The heavens must be blind. After seeing who it was, Dustless's expression turned cold. His spiritual pressure surged and a huge cold light shot out. Hado 63, Thunder Roar Cannon. The beam of light engulfed the heavens and the earth, forming a huge wave of energy that came crashing down, its momentum soaring into the sky. Caw caw caw. Before the arrow could touch Wu Qin, it was melted by the heat emitted by the Thunder Roar Cannon and turned into liquid spirit particles that floated around. Damn it, the heavens are so unfair. You've become stronger again. The white-haired man hovered in the sky. He was obviously higher up in the air and looked down at Dustless. After so many years, you're still as weak as before. Smiling contemptuously, Wu Chen opened his mouth and mocked mercilessly. What? Why are you looking for me now? Are you trying to kill me for revenge? Or do you want to take me down with you? The man was Ishida Yuryu's father, Ishida Ryukshin. Where is Shinji? Ishida Ryukshin suppressed the anger in his heart and asked hoarsely. I can't tell you. Dustless looked up and said indifferently. In fact, he knew that he had sent Candace and Bambietta to look for Shinji Kurosaki, but they didn't get any information in the end. Not even the slightest clue could be found. After so many years, nothing was found. If that's the case, then die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Another wave of arrows flew towards him. Every single one of them was deadly, and almost all of them were aimed at the vital parts of his body. Other than the few of them, it's better for everyone else to die. Seeing this, Dustless didn't even try to defend himself. He allowed the incoming arrow to hit his body and completely ignored it. Against such a weak attack, any move would be useless. Clang! 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 Dustless's skin emitted some sparks as if he had hit steel. This guy, seeing this, Ishida Ryuzo's eyes widened. He knew that Dustless was a monster. Who would have thought that after not seeing him for a few years, he would evolve into a divine beast? His body was as tough as steel, and there was no way he could break it. Oh my, you are indeed a highly skilled doctor. Where is the shoe print on your face? Back then, I spent a lot of effort to leave it behind. Could it be that you used your own medical skills to remove the footprint on your face? Ah! It's rare to see a doctor like you who can perform surgery on himself. Dustless laughed without restraint. Even an idiot could tell that he was rubbing salt on the wound, let alone the talented Ishida Ryuzo. You rascal, you! Ishida Ryuzo's face darkened. Of course, he could tell that Dustless was implying something. Countless veins popped out from his forehead as if there were worms moving inside. It was very frightening. Who are you trying to impress? Do you think that you can scare me? With a sneer, Dustless disappeared. However, the entire space was filled with his voice. It was as if he was an invisible spirit. Even the sky was filled with his voice. Bastard, where are you? Come at me if you have the guts. Don't hide. Ishida Ryuzo's eyes bulged. It was as if his eyeballs were going to fall out. The blood vessels were clearly visible. He looked left and right to search for Dustless. Your reaction is still too slow. At this moment, an indifferent voice came from the sky again. Found you. You have so many flaws. His eyes flickered. Ishida Ryuzo shot out the arrow in his hand at the fastest speed in his life. It was like a ray of light that hit Dustless. Pft. 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 His heart, head, and throat were all hit by an arrow. His organs were also filled with arrows. He was almost killed in one shot. There was no chance of survival. You're dead for sure now, you damned monster. Ishida Ryuzo had excellent eyesight. Naturally, he could see Dustless's condition. His heart was crushed. Even a god would not be able to save him. At the same time, the dark clouds in his heart disappeared. Finally, this, pft. Ishida Ryuzo's smug smile disappeared. He felt a sharp pain in his nerves. He lowered his head in shock. What he saw was a shining golden sword. I really don't know what you are so happy about. After all, we are old friends. I asked you to kill me to vent your anger. Now, not only are you not grateful, you are even glaring at me. What a heartless thing. Dustless said angrily. You be *****, Ishida Ryuzo glared at Dustless. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He stared at Dustless fiercely and raised his trembling hands. It seemed like he wanted to strangle him to death. Resistance before death. Seeing this, Dustless smiled cruelly. The Kusanagi sword in his hand suddenly spun. Caw caw caw. Ishida Ryuzo's organs were instantly ruptured. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. His abdomen was crushed by the sharpness of the Kusanagi sword. Ishida Ryuzo could feel his life draining away rapidly. He felt that death was close at hand. He even saw a skeleton in black clothes with a scythe in his hand. You can't even withstand a single blow. Shaking his head silently, Dustless pulled out the Kusanagi sword coldly. Ishida Ryuzo was in so much pain that he could not stop it. Both of them were from different dimensions. Chapter 12:12. A look of disdain flashed past Dustless's eyes as he walked past like a gust of wind. Stop right there, you bastard. Ishida Ryushin used the longbow as a support and stood up with great difficulty. He stared at Dustless's back as he clenched his fists so tightly that they were as big as his head. Not dead yet. Dustless turned his head and revealed half of his eyes. Looking at the destroyed heart, he was relieved. So it was just a momentary recovery of consciousness. To be honest, people like you are really strange. You knew that you were going to die, but you still rushed in without hesitation. TSK, are you an idiot? Ishida Ryushin gritted his teeth in anger. It was Dustless who took everything away from him. Are you unwilling to accept this? Dustless turned his head to look at Ishida Ryushin, who wanted to tear him into pieces. He had seen this kind of look many times and was used to it. Although Ishida Ryushin didn't say anything, Dustless could read the meaning behind his ferocious eyes. I have taken away many things in this world. Strength, power, fame, and status. I have taken away all the things that people yearn for. But, since you have taken away other people's things, you better return them to me. Ishida Ryushin's saliva flew everywhere and his mouth was filled with blood. He directly interrupted Dustless's speech. I'm sorry, I can't do that. You are forcing me to do something I don't want to do. But since we knew each other in the past, I can reluctantly take care of you. Dustless gently pointed his finger and revealed a bright smile. I'll give you a free ticket to the Heavenly Kingdom. As his voice fell, a black shadowless blade appeared behind Dustless's back. 90 black coffin of the broken Tao. Vicious slashes came from all directions. Ishida Ryushin, who was on the verge of collapse and couldn't even stand properly, was naturally unable to resist. A living person was cut into pieces. The smell of blood assailed their nostrils, but no one cared. Even some Jillian who noticed Dustless's presence stood in a daze and didn't dare to make the slightest move. Looking closely, Jillians were all trembling. Their faces showed a rare touch of fear. They didn't have consciousness. This fear came from the depths of their souls. Next, it's Aizen Sosuke's turn. Looking at the empty seed village that had turned into a broken dam, Wuchen walked away indifferently. A powerful ripple swept out from his body. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed the entire world. Super Shinra Tensei. Kaka. Even though they were aware of the danger and had retreated, the wandering Jillian still couldn't avoid the tragic fate of being completely annihilated. Kangzucho had also turned into an unprecedentedly large crater. It was as if it had been smashed by a meteorite from outer space. All life forms were ruthlessly obliterated by Dustless. Even if there are incidentally surviving human beings, they are also wiped out by Dustless. The whole world is so big, I want to see where you can run to. Dustless muttered inside the world gate. The bright space in front of him is Soul Society. There are only 3 places in the world: Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the modern world. Besides these 3 places, Aizen Sosuke has nowhere to go. At present, the only place he could go was Soul Society. The world in front of him suddenly became very dazzling. Dustless instinctively closed his eyes. After a while, he felt the sunlight was much softer, so he slowly opened his eyes. The picturesque Seoul society in the past has changed. Everywhere was black scorched earth and smoke of war. Head Captain, Sama. A beautiful voice came from behind. Wu Chen leisurely turned around, and a peerless beauty floated into his eyes. Luanju. How did you end up like this? As the god of death, you lost your Zanpakuto. Although I rarely taught you real skills, I taught you a lot of life-saving tricks. No matter how poor you are, you shouldn't end up like this. Putting his hands in his sleeves, Dustless asked unhappily. Hearing this, Matsumoto Ranjaku licked her dry lips and smiled bitterly. I'm afraid Seoul society is like us. I don't know why Zanpakuto betrayed their master. It's not Aizen Sosuke. Dustless raised his eyebrows and a touch of disappointment flashed in his eyes. He picked up a piece of tender grass and put it in his mouth, then chewed it with boredom. I heard about Zanpakuto's betrayal. The culprit seems to be called Muramasa. If you want them to surrender again, you have to surrender to Zanpakuto again. Kakaka. As soon as he finished talking about the method to subdue Zanpakuto, the sky cracked open and several familiar figures walked out. Urahara Kasuk. Dustless's calm eyes flashed with surprise. Noticing that something was wrong, he frowned and restrained his frivolous expression. Even if this kid's strength is not as terrifying as Aizen Sosuke, his scheming is extremely terrifying. Could it be, looking at the messy Seoul society, an incredible thought suddenly popped up in Wuchen's mind. Especially the cunning smile on Urahara Kasuk's lips, and the change in his eyes from time to time, Wuchen began to daydream. It was hard for him not to misunderstand. In the past, Urahara Kasuk cooperated with Dustless because he had no choice. If one day he had the means to resist Dustless, he would definitely not mind stabbing him in the back. Chapter 12-13. Looking at Urahara Kasuk with interest, Dustless couldn't help but start to think. What kind of method will Urahara Kasuk use to retaliate against me? Dustless was quite curious, and he expected Urahara Kasuk's betrayal. After all, he did that kind of thing to Yi in the Four Maple Court, openly molesting her. It's normal for Urahara Kasuk to hold a grudge. How can he allow someone else to sleep beside him? No man will allow this to happen. Luanju, I'll take care of this, you can go back to Seoul society for the time being. Dustless smiled at Matsumoto Luanju and said. Captain, you, looking at Dustless's smiling face, Matsumoto Luanju's heart couldn't help but tighten. Ikemara Jin was very important to her, but now that she has betrayed Seoul society, she only has Dustless who saved her from trouble in her heart. Forget it, what am I worried about? Matsumoto Luanju laughed at herself, thinking of Dustless's strength, all the confusion disappeared immediately. Her graceful body turned into a breeze and disappeared with the wind. By the way, the materialization of Zanpakuto shouldn't be done by this kid, right? Dustless's eyes narrowed. This is not impossible. If it was in the past, this kind of thing would never happen. After all, the original leader of the Godai 13 was Yamamoto Ryusai, but now Dustless took over and became the second captain, so Urahara Kasuk's hostility towards the Godai 13 was inevitable. Yo, Manager Urahara, it's rare to see you, now that Seoul society is in trouble, are you here to help? Dustless stretched, floating in front of Urahara Kasuk, after yawning, he asked, or, are you here to loot a burning house? You should understand this. Seeing Dustless appear, Urahara Kasuk carefully stared at him for a few seconds, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. In other words, you want to be my enemy. Dustless sighed and said with great disappointment, I value our cooperation very much, but now you violate our original cooperation agreement and want to cancel it in advance, it's really, don't lie. Urahara Kasuke shook his head and said, Kuchiki Byakuya, Rafaya Toshiro, Zaraki Kenpachi, and Yukitake Jushiro should have been killed by you. Although it was an unfounded guess, Urahara Kasuke's words, he was full of determination. He said, I have been monitoring his every move. It is impossible for him to kill them, so the only person I can think of is you. Your mind is, you're too smart, you can't, Kasuke T-tes, admit, Urahara you. Tease, s. The sudden sentence made Urahara Kasuke stunned. His puzzled eyes showed that he didn't understand the meaning of Wuchan's words. It was not difficult to see that he didn't understand Wuchan's meaning at all. The hidden Uraba is more dangerous than Aizen, but because he wiped out the Stern Ritter, even if he wants to resurrect the Stern Ritter, he will need a lot of souls, so... I don't need to say more, you should understand what I mean. This is not an excuse for you to kill those captains. Urahara Kasuke understood and said with a hoarse voice, It seems that I was naive enough to cooperate with the devil in the guise of the Grim Reaper. Urahara Kasuke laughed bitterly at himself. After a long while, he changed the topic and said sternly, After a great war, countless creatures will die, and a large number of souls will be produced. It can indeed attract Yawatch to surface, but have you forgotten your identity? You are a captain, not an executioner who has no regard for human life. You watched as the Great Void ravaged the modern world and soul society without doing anything, which shows that your heart is cold. Urahara Kasuke's Ryatsu was already throbbing in his body. To achieve great things, don't bother about trifles. So what if 2 captains died? Dustless didn't care and said in a carefree tone, Only when more people die and more souls are produced will Uraba, the cat that smells blood, come out. It's because of this that our cooperation fell apart, and the first person to tear up the agreement was you. Urahara Kasuke didn't back down. He gritted his teeth and said, Not only that, I will also become your enemy. Just you. And the props behind you. Even the props made by the Zero Squad can't suppress me, let alone you. Dustless glanced at the props behind Urahara Kasuke and said calmly. Ignoring Dustless's mockery, Urahara Kasuke was full of confidence and replied indifferently, to borrow a phrase from the modern world, science changes the world. Hearing this, Dustless's shining eyes couldn't help but stagnate, and he secretly cursed Urahara Kasuke for acting recklessly. Well, it's good to kill a smiling tiger like you. Who knows when you will stab me in the back. Anyway, now that I have Saiso Kurusei and shout Oro Thousand-Hand Maru, it doesn't matter if I don't have you, Urahara Kasuke, the world will still revolve around me. Dustless felt relieved, and then the Ryatsu all over his body began to rage, turning into a dense attack that swept towards Urahara Kasuke. The whole void was trembling, and the boundless energy tide covered the sky, and the clear sky was as dark as night. Now Dustless, after devouring the Psionic King, had such strength that the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked, and the sun and moon lost their light. This pervert. Seeing this, Urahara Kasuke's pupils shrank, and his old face changed dramatically. He cursed and quickly fled, but sadly, the endless energy tide came from all directions, and the whole world seemed to be Urahara Kasuke's enemy, and no place was safe. Chapter 12-14. Seeing such a scene, Urahara Kasuke's face turned green, and the Ryatsu fluctuations around him made him shudder. Heido number 91 Thousand Hands Clear Sky Cannon. The sky full of pink light attacked him, and there was no way to escape. There was no space for Urahara Kasuke to escape, and he could only hide in the black hole behind him. Boom boom boom, until the pink light exploded, Urahara Kasuke came out of the black hole with an ugly face. Yo, are you going to deal with me like this? Hiding here and there. Are you a dog? Manager Urahara. Dustless's tone was sharp, and his face was full of bad intentions, and there was no doubt that this was intentional. No matter how strong you are, you can't beat this mouth of yours. Urahara Kasuk's face turned cold, and he took out a black hood and put it on his body. Immediately, under Dustless's astonishment, Urahara Kasuk disappeared, and his Ryatsu was completely hidden. Seeing such an inconceivable scene, Dustless could not help but be flabbergasted. Then, he blinked his eyes and kept having a feeling that this scene was somewhat familiar. By the way, in the original manga, Aizen and the other two seem to have used this kind of cloak to attack Isshin Shiba, Pucci. At this moment, Dustless suddenly felt a sharp pain in his wrist, and a small scar appeared inexplicably. Did Urahara Kasuk cut it? Dustless guessed. Looking at the shallow scar, he curled his lips and said disdainfully, "However, this strength is really weak, didn't you eat?" Urahara Kasuk, bastard, is this guy a grand virtuous? No, even if he is a grand virtuous, his steel skin shouldn't be so hard. Urahara Kasuk looked at the incomplete wound, and his forehead was full of black lines, and he was particularly depressed. He attacked with all his strength, and it caused a negligible skin injury to Dustless. The worst thing was that his Zanpakuto was chipped, and the skin of Grand Virtuous was not so hard. However, this was not the most frightening thing. The Earth of Soul Society did not receive any attack, but a thick fissure that was dozens of kilometers long had appeared out of thin air. That bottomless abyss was like the masterpiece of a god, a dark maw that was impossible to dispel. What's going on? Urahara Kasuk couldn't help but be startled, his face full of astonishment. Dustless looked around and noticed that there was no movement of Urahara Kasuk. He immediately opened his observation hockey and put the whole place under his eyes. Even if you blind my eyes, you can't escape the perception of observation hockey. Dustless snickered in his heart. A few seconds later, he sensed a shadow pouncing on him from behind, secretly gathering a powerful force. Bang bang bang. The moment the Zanpakuto was about to hit Dustless's head, his body suddenly turned around, revealing a cold face and a giant foot. Pucci. Urahara Kasuk's chest was suddenly smashed into a big hole, and blood flowed non-stop. One could vaguely see his ribs, as well as various internal organs. Shoo shoo shoo. His body kept flying, and when he was about to hit the mountain in the distance, a figure stopped him. It turned out to be you, Yue-san, thank you. Urahara Kasuk solemnly thanked her, and with a painful expression, he endured the tingling all over his body and asked seriously, "Weren't you in Hueco Mundo?" "I remember fighting with Shinozaki Ichigo's group." Hearing this, Yue-san of the Four Maple Court's tone stagnated, and she didn't know how to answer. Looking at the shocking crack on the ground, a terrifying thought flashed in her heart. The eyes looking at Dustless slowly changed, from the original disgust to complex, and even with a little awe. I'll make a long story short, the same thing happened to Hueco Mundo and Soul Society. After a tremor, a huge crack appeared. This is definitely not a coincidence. Yue-san of the Four Maple Court was silent, and there was a different meaning in her words. Could it be that, this guy, could it be that, Urahara Kasuk, who has always been quick-witted, trembled and was full of horror. Realizing that something was wrong, he quickly asked Yue-san of the Four Maple Court, "Did this happen in the modern world?" "That's right." Yue-san of the Four Maple Court was silent, and after a while, he looked at Urahara Kasuk's eyes and nodded heavily. "Could it be that you have become a spirit king?" When mentioning the two words Spirit King, Urahara Kasuk's tone obviously stuttered. His head was lowered, and his eyes were dull, as if his soul had been taken away and he had become a walking corpse. "My identity as a Spirit King is such a big blow to you. If I knew earlier, I would have said my identity." Dustless complained with a look of pity, and was quite disappointed. "How can a person like you become a Spirit King?" Urahara Kasuk raised his voice and asked, full of disbelief. Although Urahara Kasuke supported Wu Qin to become the Spirit King when they cooperated in the past, it was just a joke at that time. It went in one ear and out the other, so he didn't care. Who would have thought that this nightmare would come true? What's so surprising about you? Pulling off his clothes, Dustless revealed a clean chest, and in the center was obviously inlaid with a black bead. Pointing at it, he said, "This is a Spirit King. The two of us have become one, and I am now the new Spirit King." "Impossible!" Urahara Kasuke roared, with a somewhat sharp tone. "Don't deceive yourself, Urahara Kasuke. You should know in your heart that the cracks of Soul Society, the modern world, and Hueco Mundo explain everything. The Spirit King is the chisel of all things in the world. If the Spirit King falls, all things will collapse. If the Spirit King is injured, Soul Society, the modern world, and Hueco Mundo will also be injured. In this case, do you still dare to kill me? If I stand still, what can you do to me?" Chapter 12:15. Urahara Kasuke's old face turned green, and even because of excessive suppression, there were red blood stains on both sides of his eyes. There was a touch of anger in his chest. Obviously, he was very angry with Dustless's words. His eyes were red, as if they could bleed at any time. "Kasuke, are you okay?" Floating to Urahara Kasuke's side, For Maple Quartz Yi asked softly. At the same time, she fiercely glanced at the innocent Dustless. She understood Urahara Kasuke's feelings quite well. "Don't worry, it doesn't matter. He's very tough, he won't die from anger." Wu Qin smiled awkwardly. It was very casual, but it was full of schadenfreude. It was obvious that he wanted Urahara Kasuke to be angered to death. In fact, Urahara Kasuke was so angry that it was reasonable. The culprit who molested For Maple Quartz Yi was right in front of him. Urahara Kasuke wanted to swallow him alive, but because of the other party's identity, he couldn't do it. Just thinking about it, Urahara Kasuke couldn't help but get angry. His perennially calm heart was gradually stimulated by Dustless's frivolity. Everyone had emotions. Urahara Kasuke was optimistic by nature, but this didn't mean that he wouldn't get angry. On the contrary, some good-tempered people were very scary when they got angry. "What? Do you want to kill me, the Spirit King?" "Sure, but do you dare?" "I'll just stand here and don't move. If you want to kill me, you can do it. But how many times do you think Soul Society, the modern world, and Hueco Mundo can withstand a heavy blow like that just now?" Dustless had a smirk on his face, and his tone was extremely frivolous. Urahara Kasuke was angry but didn't dare to say anything. "You're too arrogant." For Maple Courtyard Yi cried out in a lovely voice. Immediately, her body turned into a storm as she charged over. Her seemingly tender fist was filled with a powerful force that could flatten a large mountain. "Come on." Seeing this, Dustless didn't dodge. His body stood calmly in the sky, quietly waiting for For Maple Court's fierce attack. Boom boom boom. The space around Dustless rumbled violently. The violent impact was like an endless sea, swallowing up the distant mountains in the blink of an eye. Caw caw caw. Several mountains were razed to the ground one after another. Only Dustless was unscathed. Yi of the For Maple Court deliberately avoided Dustless's face and punched the mountain behind him, as if he was venting his depression and anger. There was nothing more depressing than the current situation. The enemy was right in front of you, mocking and ridiculing you, but you couldn't do anything about it. Being controlled by the enemy made you feel extremely conflicted. Dustless seized such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rub salt into Urahara Kasuke's wounds. He was extremely disdainful of such a person. "It seems like it's just as Shiju said. You're the one who killed all the captains." Yi of the Four Maple Court's face gradually became ferocious. In the blink of an eye, she seemed to have turned into a tigress, with violent killing intent accumulating all over her body. Keiki Baya and her were best friends. Many of the abilities of the strong were taught by Yi of the Four Maple Court. Naturally, they had an inseparable relationship. It could barely be considered a master-disciple relationship. TSK. You four aristocratic families are the most loyal to the Spirit King. Now you want to betray me? Dustless asked with a smile, but his voice made people shudder. Now I'm the head captain of Soul Society. With an order, your Four Maple Court will be swept into the garbage heap of history. Are you threatening me? Yi of the Four Maple Court was expressionless, but her words made the void instantly cold. Hearing this, Dustless was not moved. His eyes were dead. The threat of Yi of the Four Maple Court was as funny as Jillian threatening Vastolord. It was just self-deception. Dustless didn't care about her at all. This is not a threat, but an order. If you resist me, your family will be flattened immediately. I heard that you have a very young brother. If something bad happens to him, the Four Maple Court will have no successor. Dustless said with a smile. The arc raised high was very despicable. Full of evil fun, he said, immediately kill the man behind you, Urahara Kasuk. Otherwise, the Four Maple Court. Hee. The sinister laughter fell into Urahara Kasuk's ears. It was more terrifying than the devil. You're the most beautiful. Yi of the Four Maple Court rolled his eyes and sneered. The other aristocrats of Soul Society won't let you do whatever you want. You'd better. Dustless suddenly raised his right hand, condensing a golden flashball. It was very bright and aimed at the distant sky. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The light shot out from his fingertips and went straight to the distant buildings. The destructive light beam disappeared in a flash. Boom boom boom. On the residents of the Four Maple Court, a large number of flames appeared. A huge fireball rose into the sky. All the people who were caught in it were doomed to die tragically. I have a bad habit. I hate people who overestimate themselves the most when they threaten me. In that case, a good thing might turn into a bad thing. Let's talk about the current situation. Dustless sneered eerily. His tone was creepy and frightening. The blood-red light beam made Yi of the Four Maple Court unable to raise a chill. It was as if any of her thoughts would be suppressed. Chapter 12:16. This guy is just scaring me. I must not back down in fear, or the situation will only continue to be unfavorable to me. Four Maple Court Yi insisted indifferently. She stared at Dustless with an unfriendly murderous look on her face. She immediately shouted coldly, "Now get out of here. If you dare to appear in front of me again, I can tell you clearly that even if the whole world is destroyed, I will drag you down with me." These words were sonorous and forceful, like rolling thunder that lingered in Wu Chen's ears and did not disperse for a long time. However, Dustless just smiled, and his head suddenly moved forward a little. "Oh, you smell a lot better. Could it be that Miss Yi has taken a bath more often? This is really..." Without waiting for Dustless's voice to completely fall, a biting cold attack came head-on. Four Maple Court Yi, who couldn't bear it anymore, blasted toward him with a destructive impact. Boom boom boom. The silver wave came head-on, targeting Dustless's vital part. "It's impossible for you to injure me with such a weak attack." Dustless shook his head and sighed. He waved gently, and a wave of spiritual pressure came out. The whole world suddenly shook. Under the dense golden wave, Four Maple Court Yi's fist wind was easily annihilated. She was as weak as a willow branch, and could only go with the flow. "You want me to go? This is Soul Society, my territory. Oh, no, I have the identity of Spirit King now. Hueco Mundo, the modern world, and Soul Society are all my territory. You. For Maple Court Yi was so angry that her teeth were creaking. Frankly speaking, her careless personality was not suitable to come in contact with a cunning person like Dustless. She would only suffer losses. But even if she knew her own problem, looking at this extremely annoying face, for Maple Court Yi still couldn't help but want to go up and beat him up to vent her anger. It's you guys who should go. Dustless sneered. This guy didn't seem to understand each other's position. The ones who should get out of here should be her and Urahara Kasuke. You have guts. Yiichi of the Four Maple Court glared fiercely at Dustless, turned around and walked towards Kasuke Urahara. It seemed that he wanted to help him leave. Stop right there. Seeing this scene, Dustless didn't know why, but a nameless fire splashed in his heart. The moment Four Maple Court's Yi was about to touch Urahara Kasuke, it burned all his reason, and he immediately snorted coldly. I said to let you go. Urahara Kasuke, stay here. Dustless sneered again and again, his killing intent bursting out as he said, he won't kill me. But I want to kill him. For a dangerous person like Urahara Kasuke, Dustless naturally wouldn't let him go. Aizen Sosuke was a poisonous snake hiding in the dark, and Urahara Kasuke was also a hungry wolf that ate people without spitting out the bones. They would either become allies or completely send him to heaven. Yi of the Four Maple Court resolutely stood in front of Urahara Kasuke. I gave you a chance, but you don't know what's good for you. Dustless suddenly turned his head strangely and stared at the Four Maple Court's place. The majestic Ryatsu in his body was like an unstoppable flash flood. Stop right there. Sensing the density of Ryatsu in Dustless's body, Yi of the Four Maple Court's face changed greatly and hurriedly warned, if you dare to attack the Four Maple Court's family, I will fight you to the death, and it will be forever. Hato number 88 Flying Dragon Strikes Thief. Before Yi of the Four Maple Court's voice fell, the explosion engulfed the entire Four Maple Court's residence. Dustless deliberately avoided the Four Maple Court's residence and only destroyed a small part of it. Since Yi of the Four Maple Court didn't know what's good for him, Dustless naturally wouldn't be merciful. Boom! 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 The former magnificent Four Maple Court's residence turned into a pile of debris, and the Four Maple Court's residence became history. Go to hell. The ferocious Four Maple Court's Yi suddenly rushed over. His body was full of dense flashes, and his strength was enough to easily dismember and smash a 100-ton mountain. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it, and now you're angry because you missed it? Dustless asked flatly. His tone was as if it was a trivial matter not worth mentioning. The hundreds of lives of the Four Maple Court's family were worthless in his eyes. There was no value to be moved. Boom! 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 Dustless was hit by the absolute heavy blow, but what was disappointing was that he didn't have the most basic reaction. He continued to stand in place as if nothing had happened. In front of him was Yi of the Four Maple Court with a dazed face. The difference between us is too great. You're not enough to be my opponent. After saying that, the silent repulsive force in Dustless's body gushed out, and Yi of the Four Maple Court, who was caught off guard, was suddenly sent flying. Shinra Tensei. A black shadow was simply bounced away, and it disappeared in a flash until it reached the sky hundreds of meters away. Yi of the Four Maple Court barely stabilized his body, and he was shocked to find that the distance between him and Dustless was unreachable. You're next. With a chuckle full of hostility, Dustless disappeared. It was a simple straight-line movement, but because of the excessive speed, it gave people the illusion of crossing through layers of space. Pucci. Urahara Kasuke suddenly felt an incomparable pain in his abdomen, and a scorching light burned his whole body. He turned his head abruptly and saw Dustless with a deathly still face. The game is over. Chapter 12-17. Urahara Kasuk's vitality drained rapidly, blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and the stinging pain all over his body made it difficult for him to fight. His mind was in a trance. Looking at the face close at hand, Urahara Kasuk smiled bitterly and said self-deprecatingly, "I came full of confidence, but I returned heartlessly in failure. The world is impermanent." Urahara Kasuk sighed with a tone of powerlessness and relief. He was surprised to find that he was relaxed, and he didn't have to live like before. Very tired, very tired, very tired. As a spirit king, you should be. The one who overrides all things in the world is called a spirit king. Dustless saw through Urahara Kasuk's inner thoughts in an instant, and said coldly, "You want me to serve others? Is there something wrong with your head? As the spirit king, everything in the world should submit to me, and not the other way around." Dustless said coldly, and the Kusanagi sword also turned into light, and the powerless Urahara Kasuk fell into the void. He pointed the tip of his thumb at Urahara Kasuk, and a pink light ball flew out. Hado 54 Waste Flame. Several circular flames swept out, and in the blink of an eye, Urahara Kasuk was swallowed. Boom boom boom. The corpse emitted a large flame, and Urahara Kasuk was completely erased. Not even the residue of the corpse was left, and he disappeared forever. Kasuk. Seeing such a scene, Four Maple Quartz Yi felt as if she was struck by lightning. Looking at the body that disappeared with the wind, she instinctively grabbed towards the sky in despair. "I want to kill you." Four Maple Quartz Yi's eyes were red. Her best friend left her, and her heart was in pain as if it was being torn apart by someone's bare hands. "You should thank me," Dustless said with a gentle smile, "for Urahara Kasuk, living is a kind of pain. Having a nightmarish enemy, torturing and eating his internal organs every day, is worse than death. Now that he has stepped into heaven, he should be living very comfortably. For some people, death is also a kind of relief." Instant open. The amazing Ryatsu exploded, and Four Maple Quartz Yi roared crazily, rolling up a storm. Asking for a snub. Dustless shook his head, and a light flashed in his eyes. Divine might. In front of the Four Maple Quartz Yi, the void shifted as if he had arrived in the universe. The surrounding space was extremely fragile and was occupied by a giant whirlpool. The suction force was infinitely magnified and the Four Maple Quartz Yi was sucked in. "I'm done." Stretching his body, Dustless looked at the devastated Soul Society. The great voids were wreaking havoc in quiet Soul Society, and the death gods were wailing, but Dustless was indifferent, as if nothing had happened. Caw caw caw, the void distorted, and a huge crescent-shaped hole appeared. "This Ryatsu is..." "Ayaya, it's finally here, Sosuke Aizen." Dustless looked up and saw a few figures flashing in the dark space. He looked very relaxed, as he only needed to take care of these people in front of him. "Head Captain, it's great that you're still alive." Aizen Sosuke raised his eyebrows and said with emotion, "The Zanpakuto's rebel Shinigami's combat power has greatly decreased. It seems that choosing this time to attack was the right choice, just like what I planned." "Just like what you planned. Why are you so proud of yourself, Sosuke Aizen?" Dustless looked at the narcissist with disdain and sneered, "So, are they part of your plan?" "Them." Hearing this, Sosuke Aizen frowned and looked at Dustless in confusion. "Pucci! Pucci!" Suddenly, a painful howl came from the dark space behind him. Sosuke Aizen turned his head and saw a scene that made him stunned. Hellable took advantage of the situation to attack Aizen's subordinates and easily ended the lives of several Erancers. Even Stark, who was caught off guard, was cut in half. Ulquiorra was slightly better. He was vigilant enough. Even though he had lost an arm, it could still grow back. Hellable. Give me an explanation. Sosuke Aizen asked with a hoarse voice. He didn't expect that his most loyal subordinate, who was even more loyal than Ulquiorra, would be attacked. Look at you, this isn't what you expected. Ignoring Sosuke Aizen's black face, Dustless's laughter was full of ridicule and disdain. Don't you understand? Her libel is one of my people. Damn it. This sentence made Sosuke Aizen very angry. Although he only used Hellable as a tool, it was inexplicable to be played by a tool. Anyone would be angry. A mere vasto lord dares to betray me. Aizen's eyes were so cold that no one dared to look directly at him. His murderous aura was thick. Pay attention, I'm talking about them, not Hellable alone. Dustless reminded him in a friendly manner. Who else is there? Aizen Soki looked around in surprise. Me too, Captain Aizen. A shadow quickly flew over and stabbed Sosuke Aizen's back with his Zanpakuto. Behind you, Aizen-sama. Seeing this scene, the most loyal dog, East Sendai, quickly shouted, Ikimara Jin, you dare to betray Aizen-sama. Puchi. The Zanpakuto's sharp edge cut Sosuke Aizen's stomach open. And because Ikimara Jin's Zanpakuto had the characteristic of venom, it instantly melted Sosuke Aizen's cells. A big hole was formed in his chest, much bigger than a human's head. You bastards! Sosuke Aizen's eyes were about to burst. He was like an angry lion, roaring loudly. However, in Dustless's eyes, it was particularly sad. His fingertips glowed faintly as he was about to completely crush Sosuke Aizen. Chapter 12-18. On Aizen Sosuke's chest, a blue sphere was clearly visible, pulsating with a mysterious luster, very beautiful. The mysterious light was like a black hole, attracting the eyes of humans and making them unable to move away. TSK. What a pity, if I cared about you before, but now, forget it. Indifferently glancing at the Azure Hogyoku, Wu Chen's heart was extremely calm, without the slightest desire. After swallowing the Spirit King, this kind of thing was dispensable to him, without the slightest attraction. In fact, there was nothing in this world that could move Dustless. You two bastards, I will not let you go, I hate traitors the most in my life, anyone who betrays me must die. Aizen Sosuke stared fiercely at Haribel and Ikimara Jin. Finally, his eyes were fixed on Ikimara Jin, with fire in his eyes. You two go and stall that guy for me. Even though there was a big hole in his abdomen, Aizen Sosuke was still safe and sound. He winked at East Sensei and Ulquiorra. The implication was that he ordered them to stall Dustless for the time being. Wait for me, traitor. East Sensei glared at Ikimara Jin and went straight away. Idiot, I changed Ikimara Jin's memory before, he is now my loyal dog, and you, Aizen, changed your mind. You are his enemy. Dustless sneered, looking at Ikimara Jin's expressionless face. He gave him a, don't worry, look, obviously, he was saying, have a safe trip. Whoosh whoosh, two sharp whistling sounds came. Dustless looked at them, the speed was as fast as lightning, almost the speed of light, but Dustless could see it clearly. Although East Sensei and Ulquiorra's strength increased greatly after the Hogyoku's strengthening, they were still average. East Sensei's green eyes stared at Dustless's, light after receiving the power of the Hogyoku. He pulled out his Zanpakuto, and his Ryatsu surged, and whispered, no matter what happened in the past, everything will end here, Puchi. A cold silver light descended from the sky. Before Dong Xianyao could finish his sentence, he was mercilessly sliced into two. You unkillable cockroach, you've been caught by me several times. This time, you're finally going to die, Dustless said in disgust. He had killed this eyesore of a bug many times. Now, it was finally going to die. Then you can die too. A cold light came from behind. Dustless looked back leisurely, and what he saw was Olquiora and his Zanpakuto that could cut a mountain. Clang! The cold light crashed into Dustless's hand and was easily caught by him. Ignoring Olquiora's stunned gaze, he swung his blade. Chapter 12:19. Aizen's face turned green. He was counting on Olquiora and East Senshi to stall for time, but he didn't expect Dustless to be able to defeat him so easily. How is this a battle? He's clearly toying with a child. This guy's dimension is far stronger than mine. Although I've fused perfectly with Hogyoku, it's still a mystery whether I can defeat him or not. Sosuke Aizen looked at Dustless, who was slowly walking towards them. His mind was spinning rapidly. He even ignored Jin and Hellable, who were beside him. At the same time, the wound on his abdomen was instantly healed by Hogyoku. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Aizen's Ryatsu erupted from his body as he arrived behind Dustless in an instant and swung his Zanpakuto. Clang clang clang, the sound of metal colliding resounded through the endless void. Dustless's body, Aizen felt his arm almost break. This is not a human's head, it's clearly a lump of metal. Are you trying to tickle me with your strength? Dustless touched his forehead and said uninterestedly. He immediately took out the star badge hidden in his chest and a shiny tachi appeared in his hand. You bastard! Aizen's face darkened as he stared at Dustless ferociously. He looked at the fiery red star badge and suddenly felt that something was wrong. This temperature, this special Ryatsu, it seems to be the Ryujin Jaka of head Captain Yamamoto. Why is it in your hand? Aizen Sosuke's pupils shrank, looking at Dustless's smirk. His heart skipped a beat, suddenly realizing that something was wrong. TSK. Since you've been my dog for so many years, I'll reluctantly tell you the truth. I was the one who took the ability of the head captain Zanpakuto. I was the one who pretended to be the Hogyoku and controlled you. I was also the one who instigated you to kill the head captain. Wu Chen's tone was very casual, but every time he said a word, Aizen's face would turn ugly until it turned into the color of a pig's liver. He didn't expect that the Hogyoku's consciousness was Dustless. He was so angry that he clenched his fists. His whole body was filled with a dangerous aura that could destroy the world. Today, either you die or I die. Aizen Sosuke roared, then turned into a cannonball and rushed over. The two were separated by a few hundred meters, but Sosuke Aizen jumped through space to kill him. Zanpakuto stabbed Dustless's eyes. Even after obtaining the Hogyoku, he was still afraid of that terrifying dojutsu. Wu Chen opened his eyes slightly and an irregular black flame flashed through his eyes. He murmured, Amaterasu. A small flame was burning in Aizen's abdomen, its heat making people retreat. The black light seemed to come from the depths of hell, and no one dared to underestimate it. Ah! Black fire. Where did it come from? The fire spread all over Aizen's body. He screamed in pain, as if he regretted living in this world. He was full of despair for the future. What made Aizen's heart jump was that the fire couldn't be extinguished. TSK. Since you're in so much pain, I'll let you go. I'm such a kind person, I can't bear to see others in pain. Dustless smiled cunningly. The air around him quickly froze. You want to loot a burning house? Aizen, who was wrapped in flames, was shocked and angry. He shouted, You think you can kill me with such a cheap trick? You're underestimating me. Die! Aizen Sosuke, who was wrapped in Amaterasu, released his Ryatsu. Endless energy flowed out of the Hogyoku. Enduring the pain of being burned, Aizen Sosuke sneered, Whole of 96 a cremation. Boom boom boom. The azure blue sky turned fiery red. The blade-shaped flame rose from the ground, wanting to tear Dustless apart. Firefly's light. Lowering his head calmly, Wuchen looked down at the flaming saber light rising from the ground. Wuchen didn't dodge, and his body simply spurted out more blazing Ryatsu. Bankai, remnant flame Tachi. The charred Tachi is steaming, and he calmly stares at the huge flaming Tachi. Wuchen raises the Tachi in his hand, and a gust of wind blows out. Everything is over. Remnant flame Tachi, north, ashes of heaven and earth. The moment the saber aura came into contact with cremation, it instantly killed it. Everything turned into nothingness. The huge saber body was instantly vaporized by the saber aura. Everything returned to nothingness. Only Aizen, who was in a daze, was left in this vast world. Is this the power of Ryujin Jaka? Yamamoto is called the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years. No, his title has been replaced by this man. Staring at Dushless, Aizen Sosuke smiled slyly. He looked extremely despicable and sinister. Since he couldn't win by fair means, he could only resort to trickery. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. History was written by the winner, and the process didn't matter. After all, his opponent was a godlike player. Chapter 12:20. Zenka no Tachi's high temperature spread like a tide. The entire Soul Society was like a giant steamer. The abnormal temperature made the water in everyone's body evaporate rapidly. This guy, Aizen Sosuke's face was ashen as he felt the water in his body evaporating rapidly. His face couldn't help collapsing. Aizen Sosuke never dreamed of Dustless's overwhelming spiritual pressure. Why can I devour Hogyoku and this guy can still cheat? Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Aizen Sosuke saw a fiery red shadow pouncing at him and retreated a step. Kakaka. However, this was completely ineffective against Dustless. In an instant, he saw through Aizen Sosuke's nature and circled around him with a tricky force. He raised his sword and swept it down. Boom boom boom, Aizen Sosuke was caught off guard. Faced with Dustless's absolute prediction ability, he could only passively take a beating. All his moves were seen through. Boom. Aizen Sosuke's body splashed with a large amount of fire. The hot and violent spiritual pressure crushed half of his body and burned him until only half was left. Gulp. Aizen Sosuke was like a monster. His body emitted waves of spiritual pressure as a brand new body condensed. Because Dustless was too strong, he felt fear. The power of the Hogyoku was completely activated. Aizen Sosuke completed his first evolution. Boom boom boom. Purple light swept across the world. The spiritual pressure was as dense as water. The entire sky trembled. The spiritual pressure was unprecedentedly violent. Kakaka. At the same time, the sky cracked and a young figure came out. He had orange hair and a firm gaze. Shinozaki Ichigo. You didn't die. After seeing the newcomer, Dustless muttered. He was somewhat surprised. He thought this undying cockroach was killed by the great voids of Hueco Mundo. He didn't expect him to live until now. What a surprise, Shinozaki Ichigo. Aizen Sosuke's spiritual pressure stopped erupting. His appearance was completely different from before. He was wrapped in a white shell that was extremely hard, similar to Void's steel skin. Just like Dustless back then. Ayaya, it seems to be very powerful. Dustless narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. Obviously, he didn't take Aizen Sosuke seriously. Humph. Aizen Sosuke snorted. He could hear Dustless's sarcasm and mockery. When he was about to swing his sword, Shinozaki Ichigo's words angered him. Head captain, leave him to me. Holding the Zanpakuto tightly, Shinozaki Ichigo said with bright eyes. Of course I'd love to. Dustless nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. He looked at Aizen Sosuke with a mocking expression. His old face was full of anger. He was obviously angered by Ichigo's words. What do you mean by leaving it to me? How dare an ant like you be so arrogant? A mere human dares to boast shamelessly. Aizen sneered, but what happened next stunned him. Boom boom boom. The surface of Shinozaki Ichigo's skin was covered with dark red spiritual pressure, and his entire appearance changed. He was wearing a bull mask. His body emitted a monstrous spiritual pressure that turned into an invisible gravity domain. The entire sky shook, and the evil spiritual pressure that was filled with the smell of blood was even stronger than Vastolord's great void. He can control this form, that's not bad. It seems that even if no one helps him, this kid's protagonist aura can still help him increase his strength without limit. Wuchen sighed with emotion as he looked at Shinozaki Ichigo. His heartbeat of boredom swept away. The person in front of him was completely different from before. His short orange hair had grown long and danced in the wind, hanging down to his waist. There was a black hole in his chest, and in an instant, there were black stripe marks all around. Shinozaki Ichigo was completely void, but he didn't lose his consciousness. This is my power now. Seeing Dustless and Aizen's calm face, Shinozaki Ichigo was full of confidence and whispered, "As long as I use a little force, I can. As long as I use a little force, you won't even have a skeleton left." Before Shinozaki Ichigo finished speaking, Aizen instantly teleported behind Shinozaki Ichigo and swung his Zanpakuto, and a visible ripple instantly shattered Shinozaki Ichigo. Are you surprised? That's right, as a human, you have the same power as me. To be honest, I admire your tenacity, but... Aizen's tone was full of disdain, and he said coldly, "But an idiot will always be an idiot. With your level, even if you train for a few more decades, you will only be able to crawl and tremble in front of me, and even, Shinozaki Ichigo is trash, but you are also trash." A ghostly voice sounded behind Aizen, and that emotionless tone made Aizen's hair stand on end. He instantly turned around, but what he got was a ruthless and cruel slash. Puchi. The miserable Aizen Sosuke and Shinozaki Ichigo also suffered the same fate. They were directly cut in half by Dustless, and their bodies began to fall slowly. Looking at Dustless in the sky, Aizen was stunned. He had evolved with the help of the Hogyoku, so how could he be killed in one hit? It was as unbelievable as a dream. He had the Hogyoku, but he was killed in one hit, which was a huge blow to Aizen. Chapter 12:21. Aizen's pupils widened to the largest extent in his life. His dismembered body emitted a special reiatsu that restored his fragmented body. TSK TSK. His vitality is really tenacious. There were some unexpected ripples splashing in his pupils. Wuchen returned to calmness once again and maintained his tranquility. Why is this guy so strong? I can't accept this. Aizen Sosuke was filled with flames. In his rage, he erupted with explosive power, distorting the space around him and turning it into fragments. He spent so much effort, but in the end, he was brutally killed. Dustless's indifference to the common people and the way he looked at Aizen as if he was an ant was a heavy blow to Aizen. Puchi. Aizen clenched his fists so tightly that blood flowed out of his palms. His fingers dug deep into his flesh. A great amount of anger and unwillingness drove his reason. His mind turned upside down as if it was about to explode. Aizen's body was filled with ferocity like a fierce beast. If I can't even defeat this guy, how can I kill the Soul King? How can I kill the Zero Squad? Aizen Sosuke roared in a low and hoarse voice, his tone carried a hint of madness as if he was facing death. Aizen Sosuke, I thought you had high standards, but now I find that I was too naive. You're just an ordinary person. Dustless shook his head with a hopeless expression. What do you mean? Noticing Dustless's strange state, Aizen asked with an ugly expression. In the end, the so-called Spirit King is just a product created by Soul Society, a small character not worth mentioning. Dustless continued, the Soul King is the foundation that stabilizes all living things. If the Soul King collapses, the world will disappear. If the Soul King dies, all living things will be buried with him. If not, it's the opposite. Eisen frowned and asked in a hoarse voice, "What do you mean?" "You don't know." Hearing this, a look of disdain flashed across Dustless's brows. He smiled and said, "In other words, killing the Spirit King is equivalent to killing any member of the myriad of living beings. You're no exception. In simpler words, killing the Soul King is the same as killing yourself. You're trying to mislead the public with your lies." Eisen sneered disdainfully. "That's why I said you're ignorant. You think you know everything. What are you dreaming about? At the end of the day, you're just a chess piece of mine." Glancing at Eisen Sosuke, Dustless gradually lost interest and said coldly, "You have an immortal body, and you can obtain unlimited Ryatsu. It must be from Hogyoku. As long as you destroy it, you will return to a mortal body. The current you still can't withstand a single blow." With a sneer, Dustless turned into a storm and rushed towards Eisen Sosuke. "You can't see it." Eisen was shocked. In his eyes, Dustless was teleporting. Eisen even thought that Dustless was using a demon technique to reduce his ability to think. After all, Dustless knows too many demon techniques. Bang bang bang. Without realizing it, a heavy kick landed on Eisen, causing him to spit out blood as he was sent flying by the force of the kick. Kaka kaka. The ground cracked, and a giant hole appeared. Eisen Sosuke was covered in blood, and his face was sunken in. He was powerless. In front of Dustless, Eisen Sosuke was like a child who couldn't even withstand a single blow. Their strengths were on completely different levels. "Oh. Something's wrong." Raising his eyebrows lightly, Dustless closed his eyes and his observation haki extended. He had seen Eisen Sosuke's Kyoka Suka before. No wonder it felt so strange, it turned out to be a disguise. Under the detection of haki, Eisen's body on the ground turned into a Zanpakuto. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Behind him, a sharp aura suddenly attacked. Dust turned his head and saw a black figure approaching. Eisen Sosuke's distorted face was clearly visible, and a black light was pulsing around him. Hado 90's black coffin. The floating black luster materialized, forming a dense mass of blades that pierced toward him. Puchi. 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 Eisen Sosuke suffered a fatal injury. His entire body was riddled with holes, hundreds of them, each as big as a thumb. He looked extremely gloomy. Kaka kaka, in a trance, Dustless heard the sound of glass breaking. Looking closely, the Hogyoku inlaid on Eisen's chest turned into a pile of fragments. "You shouldn't be able to be reborn." With a calm smile, Dustless was relieved. Looking at the dying Sosuke Eisen, Dustless's heart relaxed a lot. This smelly cockroach that couldn't be killed was finally going to fall. Eisen's power comes from the Hogyoku. Once the Hogyoku is destroyed, it means that he is about to completely fall. Let's die more thoroughly. The earth surged, and a giant sword handle faintly formed, exuding a blazing temperature and destructive power. Hado 96 One Sword Cremation. Under Dustless's command, fire broke out of the ground and formed a giant sword that covered the sky. Dustless shattered it, and Eisen Sosuke, whose consciousness was already blurred, was hit by the sword. Boom boom boom. After a violent explosion, the blue sky turned crimson, and Eisen's Ryatsu completely disappeared, along with the Hogyoku fragments. Slowly, in the horizon, only Dustless was left standing alone in the sky. Chapter 1222. Spiritual pressure spread throughout Soul Society. When Dustless discovered that Sosuke Aizen had completely fallen, he breathed a sigh of relief and calmly looked for the way. You want to kill me? Dream on. A sneer came out of nowhere, and some minced meat appeared in the sky, then slowly expanded and extended out of Aizen Sanosuke's body. You're the shallow one. I've completely fused with the Hogyoku, and even you can't kill me. I'm immortal, and my super regeneration ability is beyond your knowledge. You're also the shallow one. Even if I'm destroyed to the point where not even the most basic cells are left, I can still reappear and form a new body. Aizen Sanosuke said proudly, and his expression was full of arrogance. At the same time, Aizen Sanosuke evolved again. Instead of one evolution, it was more accurate to say that he evolved 2 or 3 times, because his Ryatsu was 3 or 4 times stronger than before. There was a slit that looked like an eye on his forehead, and his face turned black. The skin on his face was torn from the middle and was now on both sides of his black face. There were 3 holes in his upper body, and the Hogyoku was in the top hole. His Zanpakuto was fused with his right hand, and there were 6 huge butterfly wings. Each wing had a skeleton growing out of its spine, and it didn't look like a Shinigami at all. It actually recovered. Looking at the blue sphere, Hogyoku, Dustless was a little surprised. This state is not bad. Not only was the form different from before, but even the voice was similar to Daikoku's, and the hoarse voice was full of murderous intent. This seems to be the final form of the Hogyoku. This is the final form. It's not that strong. Hearing this, Dustless's calm eyes rippled. At first, he was quite surprised. After all, Aizen Sanosuke and Shinozaki Ichigo fought several times to evolve to this state. But now, Dustless was really surprised. Dustless shook his head in disappointment when he sensed Sosuke Aizen's spiritual pressure. It seems that I was right to give up on the Hogyoku. This kind of vulgar item is not suitable for me. He touched the black pearl on his chest. Compared to the power of the Spirit King, the Hogyoku was nothing. The Hogyoku was created from the souls of Shinigami and Hollow, so there was a limit to the number of souls it could absorb. Sosuke Aizen's evolution was also limited, while the power of the Spirit King contained the souls of the entire world. Dustless was intoxicated by the surging waves of spiritual pressure that made him unable to stop himself. Just a so-so. Aizen, who had turned into a great void, curled his lips and said with disdain, "You are just jealous that I stole your Hogyoku. I have already evolved several times. Do you still think you can beat me? Really?" Seeing this, Dustless smirked and asked, "Then can you feel my spiritual pressure?" Aizen's face stiffened as he stared at Dustless. Indeed, he couldn't feel Dustless's Ryatsu. Dustless's Ryatsu didn't make any sense. Existences of different dimensions couldn't feel each other's spiritual pressure. That's just a coincidence. You are just using a demon technique. Sosuke Aizen retorted. Demon technique? You are. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Without giving Dustless a chance to speak, Aizen flapped his wings and instantly crossed 100 meters. His Zanpakuto slashed at Dustless's left side. Sure enough, it's just a temporary realm. You don't even have the most basic reaction. Seeing that Dustless didn't move, Sosuke Aizen increased the strength of his Zanpakuto. He wanted to kill this freak who was blocking the progress of the world. Clang clang clang, intermittent echoes echoed throughout the world. Sosuke Aizen's arm was stinging, he couldn't even hold his Zanpakuto tightly and almost dropped it. What is this guy's head made of, iron? Or is it made of diamonds? No, at my current level, I can even easily shatter a diamond. Aizen's jaw almost dropped. Dustless's right ear was intact, it wasn't damaged at all. On the contrary, Sosuke Aizen's right arm was trembling. Are you tickling me? You're not a baby who sucks on milk. Have you not eaten yet? Use more strength. Wu Qin ordered with a stern face. You bastard, stop looking down on me. His mouth twitching fiercely, Aizen Sosuke's body twitched in anger at Dustless' words, his eyes filled with anger, and a sharp roar reverberated throughout Soul Society. Boom boom boom. Sosuke Aizen flapped his wings and rolled out a storm that swept across Soul Society. The earth was scorched, and the sky was like a whirlpool. A giant void flash appeared above Soul Society. The moment it appeared, the entire sky was torn apart, revealing the dark and cold universe. The dark purple light annihilated the sky, the expanding sphere seemed to be able to swallow the universe. The sky of Soul Society was destroyed, revealing the brilliant stars in the depths of the Milky Way. Chapter 12:23. Aizen laughed wildly. At this point, he didn't expect to kill Spirit King. His heart and mind were filled with an unwavering goal. He wanted to annihilate Dustless completely. He wanted to vaporize all of his cells. Boom boom boom. The aftermath of the void flash was still gradually expanding, and the tyrannical spiritual pressure spread throughout the entire Soul Society. The boundless sky was swallowed up, and in the vast starry sky, only the high-speed spinning void flash was left. As well as Wu Qin, who was standing in the sky. He seems very strong. After a long time, he sensed that the energy ball that swallowed the starry skies had thrown out a hurricane that was as cold as a knife. Dustless's unchanging face finally relaxed a little. Are you afraid? This is reasonable. After all, you are also a creature, a living body. It is normal for anyone who is alive to fear the current me. Aizen looked down at Dustless and said in a natural tone. Fear you? Just you? Who do you think you are? Pursing his lips, Wu Qin said disdainfully, do you know the difference between us? My goal is the universe, while your goal is limited to this planet. You want to be a local god. Pedantic, vulgar, childish dream. You. Aizen rolled his eyes. His murderous intent soared. His great dream was mocked by Dustless as a child's dream. How could his arrogant heart bear it? Go to hell, you ant who blocks my path to godhood. Aizen let out an earth-shattering roar, and the high-density energy sphere in the void increased by dozens of times. The storm of spiritual pressure threatened to break through Soul Society's defenses, and the entire Soul Society howled in pain. Disappear immediately, you eyesore of a bug. With that, Aizen threw a giant energy ball at Dustless. Dustless's eyeballs were completely occupied by the energy ball, and a destructive storm swept across the world. It wasn't a void flash that hit Dustless. It was an entire world. Oh. My lovely Soul Society was destroyed by you. I'm a captain. No, I'm a Soul King now. How do you expect me to survive? How do you expect me to explain this to the millions of people? Wu Qin mumbled to himself with annoyance. He looked at the exaggerated giant void flash. His eyes were still full of ridicule. He didn't look serious at all. Even if the earth collapsed and the sky shook, even if the world was dark, and the mountains and rivers were destroyed, Dustless's heart remained calm. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the cold and unwilling roar resounded through the earpiece. Dustless heard the sorrowful cries of the Soul Society, heard the pain of the flowers and trees, and heard the mournful cries of the entire world. The mournful cries made people shudder and their hair stand on end. But when Dustless heard it, he was not moved at all. He did not even have any superfluous expression. His heart remained as calm as an ancient well. The moment I became a Soul King, I began to ignore life. This is perhaps the biggest difference between a god and other creatures. No matter how many ants die, I won't be moved or sad. Dustless muttered to himself. He looked up at the void flash. He only thought about Unohana Retsu and the others. He didn't care about the lives of others. It's time to end the fight between children. The Tensigan rippled, and the surface of his skin flashed with an emerald luster. It wrapped around Dustless's body, and in the blink of an eye, it swallowed him whole. It was the chakra mode of the Tensigan. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, behind him, 6 balls flew to the front, embellished with a mysterious luster. Dustless clenched his fists, and the balls instantly turned into liquid and condensed in his delicate arms. Then, he stared straight ahead, and the golden light in his palms flickered. Let's put an end to all grievances, Eisen. Dustless whispered softly, and the powerful light beam in his hands extended to infinity. It wasn't an exaggeration to describe it as 1,000 miles. 1 meter, 10 meters, 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters. The light was boundless and had no end, just like Wu Chen's boundless ambition. However, no one dared to question his power, just like Wu Chen's original body, forever unfathomable. Golden Will Reincarnation Explosion. Kacha! The giant energy ball was cut in half by the golden light. It was as simple as cutting tofu. It couldn't resist at all. Pucci. Eisen himself was the same. Even when he died, he still looked at the light beam that was about to sweep across the universe. Then, he looked at Dustless's indifferent face and finally understood. There was a world of difference between a man who only wanted to be a god of a planet and a man who wanted to step on the universe. The two didn't have the slightest similarity. It was as far apart as the difference between the 2 dimensions and the 3 dimensions. In Eisen's world, he wanted to step on all living things and become the only god, while Dustless wanted to step on the universe and become the god of gods. The difference between their realms was too great. They weren't from the same world. That old bastard Yawatch still hasn't come out. I've been waiting for him for a long time for this beautiful script. If he doesn't show up, how can I, the director, endure it? Damn bastard, at least have some influence. He scanned the void, and his irritated gaze passed through Soul Society, extending to Hueco Mundo and the modern world, but he did not find any trace of Yawatch, not even his little brother Mickey. He could not help but curse Yawatch. Yawatch, who was hiding in the dark, was also stunned. The clash between Dustless and Eisen was more intense than any of his previous battles. Even the battle with Yamamoto and Ryu Shigeki wasn't as intense as this. Eisen's ability to destroy the world with a snap of his fingers was enough to make all living beings tremble in fear. However, in front of Dustless, he was nothing more than a clown. Chapter 1224. Yawatch had no other choice. He didn't expect Dustless to be so terrifying. His strength was far beyond any of his past enemies. What Yawatch couldn't accept the most was that this guy had obtained Yamamoto Ryusai Shigekuni's Zanpakuto. That was something that Yawatch himself coveted, and the way he got it made him want to cry. This new head captain. How did he get Yamamoto's Zanpakuto Tachi? Yawatch was deeply confused. He was curious and perplexed about how Wuchen had acquired Zanka Huatachi. Jugram, how did that guy get Zanpakuto Tachi? Hearing this, Jugram felt awkward and ashamed. He said apologetically, "Your Majesty, I fought with him before and was unfortunately killed by him. Because of that, he took my star badge, so," at this point, Jugram lowered his head and looked at Yawatch. I'll let it go this time. Don't disappoint me in the future. There will be no next time, Jugram. Yawatch snorted. Perhaps if it was someone else, Yawatch would have already killed him. However, Jugram's identity was special. He was the next king of the Wandenrake. At the same time, he was also Yawatch's other half. Yawatch couldn't afford to kill him. Your Majesty, then Jugram stopped talking and looked at Yurbok, who was resting with his eyes closed. He also fell silent. All the energy in his body had been drained, and he was extremely tired. Continue hiding. We don't have the right time now. Yawatch waved his hand and said resolutely. When he said that, even he himself felt a little incredulous. It was clearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but due to the opponent's strength, he had to find such a tongue-twisting excuse. Yawatch himself felt aggrieved and unhappy. He had never felt so vexed before. I thought that Yamamoto Ryusai Shigekuni's death was a good thing. Who would have thought that an even more perverted bastard would appear? He even got the thing I wanted, Zanpakuto Tachi. Some Harbok cursed in their hearts, their resentment rising to the heavens. Your Majesty. Jugram had naturally noticed Habaku's strange behavior and could only smile bitterly. He felt powerless towards Dustless's sudden rise to power and felt that it was inconceivable. A mere person was able to stop the entire Wandless Empire in their tracks. No one else in the world could achieve such a feat. The only person who could do so was Dustless. That heaven-defying absolute strength had suppressed them to the point where they couldn't breathe. They could only hide and hide like they were now. They were no different from street rats that everyone wanted to kill. Allah, you are not dead yet. Your strength, oh, no, I should say that the power of the Hogyoku is not bad. Dustless had a smile on his face. His praise was harsh, making Aizen feel uncomfortable. Aizen stared at him ferociously. His piercing eyes made people shrink back in fear. Looking closely, Sosuke Aizen was still in a dismembered state. Don't be complacent. No one in this world can end me, not even you. Aizen Sokiai retorted in a sharp voice. A carefree smile appeared on his face, and his twisted old face was full of pride. He looked at Dustless. His face was clean and emotionless, only a hint of pity. You are just a dog that I used to attract Habak. Since he hasn't come out yet, do you think you have any value in being used? I'm sorry, I don't. Dustless said coldly, sending Sosuke Aizen to hell. At the same time, his chakra began to surge, like an ancient dragon that was about to wake up. His aura raged, and the ancient barbaric aura descended. What's going on? Sosuke Aizen's face darkened. His unique aura made him feel like he was in the same situation. Especially when Aizen felt an extremely dangerous power coming out of Dustless's body. If he wasn't careful, Aizen would be in trouble. Aizen's body that was torn apart by the Golden Wool reincarnation explosion healed again. Ha! I have an immortal body. Even if you destroy my body, you can't, I'll end you now. The black sphere floated into the sky, its boundless gravitational force sweeping across Soul Society. There was no limit to it, and even the fluctuations of power passed through Soul Society, strongly affecting the real world and Hueco Mundo. Chibaku Tensei. The gravitational force that destroyed the world showed its ferocity. The earth that hadn't moved for tens of thousands of years cracked, and the bright sky was covered by the black light. It was just a tiny bead, but it had destroyed the entire world. An unusual vibration spread throughout the entire world. Kakaka. A large mountain rose from the ground and floated in the sky, approaching the bead. Even Sosuke Aizen was unable to control himself. What the hell is this? How is this possible? Aizen's confident eyes were shaken, and his tone was full of shock. This was the first time he encountered such a strange situation. You want me to wait for death? Wishful thinking. With a groan, Sosuke Aizen's Ryatsu began to surge. The Ryatsu melted the floating mountain fragments around him, and he was lucky enough to escape from the gravitational force. Hato 96, Cremation. The ground began to shake, and a giant flame sword could be seen clearly. After fusing with Hogyoku, Sosuke Aizen became immortal, and it didn't matter if a part of his body was damaged. Seeing the flame of the broadsword, Wuchen smiled contemptuously and was extremely calm. Will grave, border prison. In the invisible world, several shadows flew out one after another, blocking Sosuke Aizen's attack like an iron wall. Boom boom boom. Cremation's giant blade only extended half of its body before it inexplicably exploded, and molten lava swept out. You mentioned an explosion. What's going on? Sosuke Aizen was stunned, and his eyes widened in shock. Cremation didn't even hit Chibaku Tensei, and it inexplicably exploded. How could he not be surprised? It's time to call it a day. You can get up there too. Glancing at Sosuke Aizen, Dustless said indifferently, as if he was talking to an insect. Sosuke Aizen's old face was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Ha! Dustless shouted, and the chakra in his body erupted even more vigorously. Kakaka, the void was torn apart by the strong gravitational force, and the whole world seemed to have reached its end. Puchi! Sosuke Aizen tried his best to resist the gravitational force around him, and even if his body was torn apart, he gritted his teeth and held on. He knew that he would be finished if he was sucked in. You want to catch me? What a joke. After a moment of stalemate, Aizen adapted to the harsh environment and resisted the attack of Chibaku Tensei for the time being. He shouted, I'm not the same as I used to be. Put away your contemptuous eyes, and get lost. Dustless snorted disdainfully, and the chakra in his body erupted to the limit. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The floating mountain fragments all accelerated in an instant. The slow momentum was gone, and all of them flew toward the expanding Chibaku Tensei at the speed of sound. In the blink of an eye, the palm-sized sphere turned into a meteorite that covered the sky. This time, you annoying bug should be finished. Dustless muttered to himself, and at the same time, his eyes expanded. The meteorite grew bigger and bigger until it almost covered the entire sky. This way, you annoying cockroach won't be able to jump anymore. Wuchen smiled faintly. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, he shouted softly. Kamui! A black hole appeared in the void, and Dustless threw the meteorite into it. It ends here. Chapter 12:25. Dustless didn't know what the others were thinking. Anyway, he had already said what he wanted to say. After arriving at their destination, the other party still couldn't find the other one and wanted to kill him. At that time, Dustless wouldn't give the other party a chance. He would leave all kinds of information along the way. In such a situation, he would directly reveal the coordinates of the two to the other gods and let them bring reinforcements to besiege them. On the other hand, he might be able to fight the other party quickly. Although he didn't need to directly distinguish the winner, he could carefully fight a battle of attrition with the other party and wait for reinforcements to arrive. In this case, it would be a better and more reliable plan. Dustless's plan was as stable as that, but after coming up with it, it still depended on the black-robed man's decision. The black-robed man carefully observed Dustless in front of him. After careful observation, he felt that Dustless didn't seem to be lying. However, he also knew that these words couldn't be taken lightly. It was very likely that there would be a problem. But now, he had no other choice. He could only try his best to treat a dead horse as a living horse. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, the black-robed man nodded directly to Dustless. All right, since you've already said so, then I'll fulfill your wish. You'll go with me. The rest of you will stay here and watch over Yido. If Yido shows any abnormal behavior, then you can blame yourself. As long as you're still alive, then it's fine. If I send out a signal, then you can just kill Yido. This time, the black-robed man could be said to have arranged the action clearly. He didn't give the others any chance to survive. In the face of such a situation, Dustless was obviously gnashing his teeth. The black-robed man in front of him said that he believed in him, but secretly, he still didn't trust him. He still left Yido on his side. He probably planned to kill Yido immediately if he found out that Yido had deceived him. Then, the black-robed man would personally kill Yido. In the face of such a situation, Yido directly closed his eyes and didn't say anything. He was always thinking about Dustless in his heart, hoping that Dustless would be safe. After all, no one could change Dustless's decision. Moreover, Dustless was determined to do it. It could be said that he was very strong. Dustless also made up his mind at this moment. He absolutely couldn't die in this journey. The black-robed man saw that Dustless didn't have any objections. This time, he believed in Dustless even more. Especially in the face of such a situation, he directly narrowed his eyes and nodded slightly. Then, he said to Dustless, "In order to prevent you from having the strength to escape midway, I won't release the chains on your body. In such a situation, you can continue to bind her. However, I will reduce my strength so that you can do it better. You won't be in so much pain while being chained by him." In such a situation, although Dustless was a little dissatisfied sometimes, he didn't say anything in the end. After all, at this point, it could be said that he had already reached one of his expectations. After that, Dustless planned to set off quickly. After all, if he set off now, he didn't know if he could reach that place. Dustless specifically told the black-robed man that this place was the place where he first appeared. Did Dustless really have some kind of mystery? Could he once again return to the place where the other big tree was located? But no matter what, he could only report this location now. In such a situation, there was no need to say anything more. He hurried along with the black-robed man. There was still a little distance between this place and that place, but for a god, the distance wasn't particularly long. Facing such a situation, Dustless completely remembered what kind of place this was and whose temple this place was. In such a situation, it was possible to know who was cooperating with the black-robed man and who was protecting and indulging the black-robed man in such a situation. Dustless suspected that there was another possibility. The black-robed man was the god in charge of this area. After all, the black-robed man shouldn't have betrayed so blatantly without being discovered. Dustless was more inclined to think that the black-robed man and the god in charge of this place had reached some kind of deal that allowed the black-robed man to exist here safely and not be found by others. Wu Qin maintained a certain degree of silence along the way. Even the black-robed man didn't say much. It seemed that he had a close yearning for the destination. He wanted to know what kind of place it was in the middle. Dustless secretly did something along the way. He did it very secretly. Dustless guaranteed that the black-robed man didn't know about it. Otherwise, if the black-robed man knew about it, he would have already found Dustless. Therefore, the black-robed man shouldn't know what kind of signal Dustless left behind to guide others to this place. In such a situation, they soon arrived at this place. Dustless felt the familiar environment and breathed a sigh of relief. He really felt that he hadn't seen these things for a long time. He had been killing enemies on the battlefield for a whole day. In the enemy's base, he hadn't seen these familiar environments for a long time. Now, these familiar environments had changed a little. He estimated that they had already experienced several cycles of reincarnation. After Wu Qin arrived at this place, he let out a sigh, showing a little emotion. Then, he continued to walk. Chapter 12:26. Finally, Dustless said to the black-robed man next to him, "To be honest, I was just an ordinary person at that time. Here, I sensed a dark shadow directly attacking a person. Under such circumstances, I acted bravely, but I fell into a dangerous situation. At the critical moment, I entered a mysterious state, a mysterious environment. Therefore, I gained a power." The black-robed man walked while listening to Dustless's narration. At the same time, he carefully observed the surrounding environment to see if there was anything special. In such a situation, he wanted to find the most important thing. Maybe those key things can be confirmed after finding the location of the thing that Dustless mentioned. In that case, he didn't have to look for it anymore. After all, he was now wandering aimlessly in this place. In such a situation, Dustless also sighed, then directly said to the black-robed man next to him, "Can I ask you what exactly happened to you? I can feel that there is a feeling in your body. This feeling is very urgent, urging you to find and do these things. What kind of situation and things have happened to you? What kind of accident has happened to you? What will happen? Is it convenient for you to tell me about it?" Dustless can only try his best to stall for time at this moment and see if he can continue to hear more information from this person. This way, it will be convenient for him to speak. If the black-robed man escapes, he can go and check his identity. After all, if some reinforcements arrive at that time, it is very likely that there is no way to do anything to this person. In such a situation, he can only compromise as much as possible and let the black-robed man's identity be exposed. This way, he can be caught sooner or later. Dustless felt that the black-robed man in front of him knew the culprit of those monsters. It was because of those monsters that a series of tragic events happened. Therefore, the black-robed man in front of him must not be able to clear his name. The black-robed man glanced at Dustless. After Dustless came here, he seemed to feel that his heart had calmed down a little. Facing such a question, he finally thought about it and slowly opened his mouth. "I know you're inquiring about me, but at this moment, I'm actually in the mood to talk about it. Naturally, I'm willing to tell you about it. However, I'm not afraid of what kind of tricks you might play. After all, these aren't particularly big problems for me. Even if I reveal it to you, you can't do anything to me." The black-robed man's arrogance reflected his confidence in his own strength. In the face of such a situation, Dustless couldn't wait. After all, it would be the best situation for him if the black-robed man underestimated him more and more. Therefore, Dustless heard from the black-robed man some things about the examination. Other people were indeed possessed by the devil during cultivation. Then, under such a situation, he began to think of ways to return to his original appearance because he really didn't want to become a monster that was neither human nor ghost. However, such a situation didn't improve at all. The black-robed man tried many methods, but in the end, he didn't see any effect. At most, this sentence was effective, but it couldn't cure the root cause at all. In such a situation, it triumphed over other thoughts. He thought of his own people. Now that he had become like this, all he needed to do was to capture more people and conduct more research. Perhaps he would be able to get the final answer. In that case, he might be able to save himself. But he didn't want to waste any more time. Instead, he thought about his own people. He thought about his own people. When Dustless heard this, he felt that everything was as he expected. But in such a situation, he seemed to have some doubts. According to the other party's description, although his strength was strong, he couldn't build such a large base by himself. He couldn't do such a big thing. After all, there were still his accomplices. In such a situation, Wu Chen listened carefully. This was what happened later and what kind of unforeseen event happened in the following situations. Then Dustless knew that under such circumstances, the black-robed man suddenly met other people. These people were also very crazy. They also wanted to create something. Although they didn't know what the purpose of creating these things was, the black-robed man felt that since everyone had the same purpose, they should cooperate together. Dustless didn't know what the black-robed man was talking about. Dustless didn't know what the black-robed man was talking about. After hearing this, Dustless was a little surprised. He really didn't know what was going on. Under such a situation, many things became more confusing. It turned out that there were two groups of people. The first group was led by the black-robed man who wanted to do experiments. The other group was more crazy. They seemed to want to create chaos and death. Under such circumstances, they created so many monsters and made more yarn. Nobody knew what they wanted to do. Under such a situation, Dustless thought about all this in his heart. He wondered who the other group of people were. Were they traitors? Or were they people who had never appeared in front of others? If they weren't traitors, then everyone should have more or less known about some special situations and information. They should have already exposed some things that should be exposed. Therefore, it should be those hidden people who didn't often appear in front of others. These hidden people had crazy ideas and then crazily did experiments for their own purposes. Under such circumstances, they hit it off with the black-robed man. In the process, these people also instigated some gods to join their camp. Chapter 12:27. Dustless felt that all of this seemed a little fake, but his rationality told him that all of this was true. Dustless wasn't lying, and what he said was all true. In the face of such a situation, Dustless only felt more and more confused and complicated. Even if he could capture this black-robed man, he wouldn't be able to find out who the other group of people were. Dustless reckoned that this black-robed man wouldn't sell out the information of those people. If this was really the case, then it would be a little troublesome. After all, if he couldn't completely eliminate those dangers, then the following situation would be very bad. In the face of such a situation, if those people didn't give up, they would have to find a suitable time to continue to create those monsters. At that time, they might become more hidden. They might accumulate a certain number of monsters before revealing them to attack others. When Dustless thought of this possibility, he felt a little scared. Therefore, Dustless knew that if he captured this person in front of him, the final battle might not stop. Facing such a situation, Dustless's heart occasionally had a trace of hesitation and confusion. He was thinking about what to do at this time. He felt a little helpless now. Originally, he thought that he had seen everything, but he didn't expect that what he saw was only a part of it. He hadn't seen the more comprehensive part yet. In such a situation, Dustless also felt a little helpless, but Dustless would never give up because of these things. Even if there was still a hidden group of people, Dustless wouldn't give up so easily. He was determined to find those people and eliminate them. Under such circumstances, Wu Qin said to the person in front of him, "I want to know if you are a god or not. Do you have a temple of your own or not? If you do, then how did you hide it from everyone? Could it be that in such a situation, you will continue to divide yourself into two?" Facing such a situation and such a question, the black-robed man was contemplating whether he should continue to hide the truth instead of telling everything to the person in front of him. After all, he wasn't sure if it was a good thing for him to reveal everything under such circumstances. Dustless knew that the black-robed man had fallen into hesitation under such a situation. But now that it was a critical moment, if he could find out more information, then he might be able to solve the mystery. If that was the case, he might be able to unravel more of the mystery. Originally, these things would have been presented to him very well. In such a situation, Dustless said to the black-robed man in front of him, "What are you still hesitating about? After all, I am now firmly in your hands, right? If you don't find anything in this place, you'll kill me, won't you? In such a situation, what is there to be afraid of? I'm on your side now." Dustless's persuasion directly touched the black-robed man's heart. Facing such a situation, the black-robed man finally said to Dustless after hesitating for a moment, "It seems that you do seem to be very interested in my affairs. Then I'll tell you directly. Under such circumstances, I am indeed a god. It's true that I made some mistakes in my own strength and strayed down the wrong path. That's why I covered myself so tightly and found other ways to save myself." After hearing such an answer, Dustless finally sighed. It seemed that he really didn't understand why such a problem would appear. Originally, a god was high above, solving the problems here every day, dealing with demons and ghosts, and then harvesting the power of faith to obtain immortality. In this case, it was really a good thing. But in such a situation, why would there be a problem directly? Previously, he met a god. Because there was a problem with his artifact, it caused him to suffer a backlash. Then in such a situation, what kind of problem did this person have? Was it because his artifact was contaminated with demonic energy? Or was it because he was sick? Or was it because he accidentally went astray? Then, he directly infected his artifact. That was why something happened to him in such a situation. In fact, as a powerful god, under certain circumstances, if he wanted to decisively make these steps, he should be able to do it. But why didn't he do it? Facing these questions, Dustless hesitated for a while. He didn't know whether to ask this question or not. After all, this matter felt like a private matter in the heart of the person. If he asked this question, then he didn't know if he could get an answer. Anyway, he already knew the identity of the black-robed man. He was now sure that the black-robed man was a powerful god. If he could escape from this place and be rescued, then the black-robed man in front of him would run away. Then after some investigation, he would be able to find out the true identity of the black-robed man. At that time, this black-robed person would really not be able to escape. His purpose would have been achieved. Then, was there a need for him to explore the scars and the depths of his heart? After all, the reason why he became like this came from those things. If he directly asked him in such a situation, it would be equivalent to sprinkling salt on his wound. Although the black-robed person did a lot of wrong things, he still had his own rights. He was also a god who had done a lot of good things. Chapter 12:28. Therefore, in such a situation, Wu Chen finally gave an answer. It was better for him to stop asking and not ask any more questions. After the rescue team came and captured the identity of this god, he would ask other people about other things. It was better not to ask now. After all, it wasn't necessary. When the black-robed man saw that Dustless didn't continue asking, he became a little curious and asked directly. You don't want to continue asking in such a situation? I thought you would continue to ask. After all, you're really curious about me, so I'm willing to tell you about it. Besides, I know that if I can't find a way to survive here, we will be buried here together. I'm also willing to tell you a lot of things. Dustless felt that the most important thing in such a situation was that if he couldn't find a way to survive, then he would die together with the black-robed man. Therefore, at this time, the black-robed man's trust in him increased a lot, but even so, it was still the same. The black-robed man didn't care much about this matter. Instead, he continued to talk on his own initiative. He didn't care whether the black-robed man was willing to listen or not. Dustless continued to learn about such a person. In such a situation, the black-robed man obtained a very good Yiliang, that is, a divine artifact that didn't have a loyal owner and was engraved with the name of many people. Although such a divine artifact was quite good in terms of power, in the end, it was still in a mediocre state. Generally speaking, no one liked it. Dustless didn't expect that a great god like him would try to subdue this Yiliang under such circumstances. After all, there was really no need for this matter. A person like him could directly obtain a lot of good, unique, and clean divine artifacts. At that time, when the black-robed man met the Yiliang, he liked this divine artifact very much and invested a lot of effort into it. Then Dustless knew that there was a problem with Yiliang. But in such a situation, the black-robed man was still thinking of other ways to get the divine artifact. Yiliang's divine artifact was a problem. Yiliang's divine artifact was a problem. But under such circumstances, the black-robed man was still thinking of other ways to get the divine artifact. Because he really loved and cared for this divine artifact very much, he found that no matter what kind of person he was, he had no other way. Under such circumstances, he directly went astray and accidentally did the wrong thing. Then, under such circumstances, he directly carried out a symbiotic relationship with this Yi-Liang. Both of them were directly tied together. But under such circumstances, the final result was very bad. In the end, he couldn't find a solution. On the contrary, Yi-Liang directly wanted to commit suicide out of guilt to solve all the problems. However, suicide couldn't solve the problem. Instead, it made the problem of the black-robed man in front of him more serious. When Dustless heard this, he felt that this was a tragedy, a tragic one. Dustless didn't know what to say for a while. In fact, Dustless knew that the person in front of him had finally embarked on a path of no return. It was very miserable. Dustless felt that he was a little cruel at this moment because most of what he said was a lie. The Yi-Liang didn't have a correct way to survive long ago. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, the Yi-Liang was already doomed. But Dustless knew that he had to do so. If he didn't do so, he would be in danger. It could only be said that one wrong step led to many wrong steps. Now, there was no turning back. After Dustless heard the whole story, the person in front of him asked him, "What's wrong?" In such a situation, after telling the story, you still haven't found a clue of the original place. My patience is limited. Your life and death are in my hands, but I can't find it for a long time. I'm getting impatient. Dustless also knew that this was where his danger lay. Facing such a situation, he was thinking about what he should do next. He could only stall for time as much as possible because there was no other choice. In such a situation, Wu Qin could only patronize the other party for the time being. I said that I might not be able to find this place. In such a situation, I can only try my best to wait patiently. Perhaps if we continue walking, we might be able to find this crucial place. After all, the things that happened before and the memories are also a very mysterious moment and state for me. After Dustless said these words, he stared straight at the black-robed man, waiting for his reaction. At this moment, the black-robed man stopped. Obviously, he didn't want to continue the search in such a situation. The black-robed man's eyes flashed with a dangerous light at this moment. He stared at Dustless and said, "Do you remember last time that you entered such a state because you were on the verge of death? How about this time, I'll put you in such a state and see if you can still enter such a state. What do you think?" "I think it's still possible." Wu Qin could see that there was some light in the other party's eyes. He knew that he was in danger at this moment. The other party was not negotiating with him at all. Instead, under such circumstances, the other party directly made this decision for him. He was simply making a decision for him. Dustless was thinking at this moment whether he should directly fall out with the black-robed man or continue to pretend in such a situation. Chapter 1229. In such a situation, Wu Qin didn't intend to continue feigning civility with the other party. After all, there was no need to exist in such a situation. If he really continued to act with the other party, if the act became real and hurt himself, wouldn't the loss outweigh the gain? Furthermore, Dustless wasn't willing to entrust his life to someone else. That was the most insecure thing he could do. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, Dustless directly spoke to the black-robed man. "I don't think it's necessary at all. Besides, although you don't have much time left, we're already here. Why can't we continue to be patient? Besides, the story you're going to tell is quite short. Do you think it's realistic to want to find that thing in such a short time?" "I don't think it's realistic." At this moment, the black-robed man was already brandishing the weapon in his hand. Under such circumstances, the chain on his hand fluttered and his body began to emit some aura. Under such circumstances, it seemed like the black-robed man was about to attack the person in front of him. Dustless also quickly prepared for battle. After all, no matter what, all the tricks he had done along the way should have been sent out. In the face of such a situation, the other party should be able to save him in time. There was no need for him to panic. What Dustless needed to do now was to stall for time as much as possible until the reinforcements arrived. As long as the reinforcements arrived, the black-robed man in front of him wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, Dustless directly spoke to the black-robed man in front of him. "It seems that you are determined to use your method. Then, I have nothing else to say. I can't put my life in your hands like this. After all, this is not a guarantee for me. If you really want to kill me, and I don't have any ability to resist, I will definitely be unwilling to be killed by you. So, I am willing to fight with you." After saying these words, Dustless directly pulled out his Tang saber and pulled away from the black-robed man in time. During the journey, Dustless had already recovered from the previous battles. Under such circumstances, Dustless already knew how to fight this battle. This battle was a battle of life and death. There wouldn't be a battle of attrition. This time, the black-robed man would definitely be serious. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, what he had to do now was to fight with all his might. Then, he had to probe the black-robed man's strength. In such a situation, he had to rely on what kind of ability the black-robed man had to reach this stage. After all, Dustless was able to deduce the black-robed man's identity. Even the black-robed man himself admitted that he was once a god. In such a situation, Dustless couldn't let his guard down. He had to be cautious. The moment Dustless pulled away from the black-robed man, he saw a hook with demonic chi. It directly attacked Dustless in front of him. Facing such a situation, Dustless didn't panic. He calmly dealt with the situation and directly used his Tang saber to block the black-robed man's attack. In such a situation, Dustless felt that the black-robed man took out a dagger. This dagger made Dustless feel a little dangerous. Dustless knew that this dagger was the one the black-robed man made when he first met him. Moreover, this dagger seemed to have a great attacking power against him. It could be said to be a very powerful and unpredictable weapon. Dustless didn't know what this thing was, but he could instinctively feel the threat it posed to him. The black-robed man directly said to Dustless, "Because I don't know about the little tricks you have done along the way. Don't forget that I was once a god. In such a situation, there are some messages that I naturally know. In the face of such a situation, guess what I did?" After Dustless heard such news, he was slightly surprised because he really didn't expect such a situation. He thought that the black-robed man didn't know about the little tricks he had done along the way. And if the black-robed man knew, why didn't he stop him earlier? In such a situation, the black-robed man only said it now. It felt like the black-robed man was testing him. Moreover, according to the black-robed man's temper, if the black-robed man knew about the tricks he had done along the way, then the black-robed man would naturally know that he was lying to him. There was no need for the black-robed man to follow him all the way to this place. It would be better for the black-robed man to attack him directly. Therefore, Dustless continued to pretend that he didn't understand anything and said to the black-robed man with some doubts, "What tricks? I don't know. In such a situation, I clearly didn't do anything, but you said so. I really don't understand." After hearing these words, the black-robed man smiled and said directly to Dustless in front of him, "There's no need for you to put on a show with me because there's really no need for it. I've been indulging you all this time because I want to know if what you said is true or not. After all, it could be half true and half false." After hearing the black-robed man's words, Dustless knew that the black-robed man had seen through him a long time ago. The black-robed man just didn't say anything because of the black-robed man's last wish. But because of his current actions, the black-robed man had already determined that the black-robed man's wish was completely destroyed. There was no way to save the black-robed man. Therefore, the black-robed man wanted to kill him and bury him with the black-robed man. Dustless was naturally unwilling to agree to such a situation. Fortunately, he wanted to know if all his plans had been seen through. Chapter 12:30. If all the things he left behind were already in trouble, then it was really a very bad thing. It was simply a nightmare for him. But now, Dustless could only look forward to it a little. It was not completely destroyed yet. After all, there were several kinds of hands and feet he left behind, and they were all hidden. Even if she could distinguish one or two of them, she would not be able to distinguish them completely in such a situation. Otherwise, his message would not be able to be sent out, and his signal for help would be intercepted halfway. Then, he could only fight against the person in front of him. He could no longer wait for reinforcements to arrive. If this was really the case, then the situation would be very bad. Facing such a situation, Dustless frowned. Then, he looked at the person in front of him with a serious expression. His mind was quickly thinking about what to do next. But the other party had no other patience. He wanted to take Dustless's life. This time, the other party's chain was very sharp, and there were some sharp weapons on it. It seemed like the other party really wanted to save him. At this moment, Dustless was also a little embarrassed to deal with it. Tang Dao and Dustless were telepathically connected. When facing the other party's attack, they could always react emotionally and resist the other party's fierce attacks. But even so, the situation was still not that optimistic. At this moment, the other party did not hold back at all. It seemed like the other party wanted to kill him wholeheartedly. Dustless had been thinking about the other party's weakness. If his staff and close combat were not good enough, then he would eventually be defeated by the other party. What was the other party's weakness? Dustless planned to attack the other party's heart last time, but the other party's weakness did not seem to be the heart. If the weakness was not the heart, then where would it be? His chain? His neck? Or his head? In hindsight, I felt that it was very likely that the final weakness would be one of his weapons. Through the previous stories, I knew that he and his weapon were almost on the same page. They would live and die together. In such a situation, the weapon would be closely related to him and would be implicated in some way. Let's talk about the first chain that was related to the other party. That Yi Liang was still there. But Dustless always felt that it was not that simple. After all, the chain in his hand had a very special relationship with the person in front of him. When he first saw this chain, it was because he came to a temple. Then, there was a kind deity in the temple. Because of improper management, the deity had too many divine weapons under her hands, which caused the divine weapons to fall ill. She also suffered a backlash. Among them, this chain could be said to be one of the most powerful weapons. Unfortunately, it had been neglected. That was why this chain had a problem. But the key point, how was this matter related to the black-cloaked person? Could it be that the chain and the black-cloaked person made a deal? So the two of them colluded with each other. Dustless suddenly felt that he seemed to have grasped an important clue in his mind, but such a clue was not completely displayed in this place. It was as if there was a cloud of fog that covered all these things, allowing him and the man to analyze them. However, Wu Qin knew that this chain must be unusual for the black-robed man. Although he didn't know what the relationship between the two was like, Dustless always felt that it was not simple. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, Wu Qin intended to make a guess and see if this chain would be the black-robed man's weakness. If it wasn't the black-cloaked person's weakness, then the black-cloaked person's weakness must be somewhere else. It was more likely that one of the divine weapons on the black-cloaked person's body was the black-cloaked person's weakness, which was closely related to the black-cloaked person's life. But this was just a guess. But now, if he guessed wrongly, then it was very likely that something bad would happen. So he had to be careful and not make a guess casually. So in the face of such a situation, Dustless was also thinking about how to tactfully test the black cloak person's weakness. If he attacked the black cloak person's weakness with all his strength, then he would certainly bear the pressure of the black cloak person's all-out attack. Dodging the black cloak person's attack and attacking the black cloak person at the same time was a difficult thing to do. So he only had one chance to guess wrongly. If he wanted to determine the black cloaked person's weakness, then he could test it first. After confirming it, he could directly attack the black cloaked person without any scruples or reservations. In the face of such a situation, Dustless was already prepared at this moment. In this process, he directly pretended to attack the black cloaked person, but in fact, he was going all out to damage the chain to see if his guess had any effect. Under such circumstances, the chain was retracted. The Tang saber fiercely chased and chopped at the chain, causing some small flaws to appear at the mouth of the chain. In such a situation, he carefully stared at the black cloaked person, trying to see if he could find any information from the black cloaked person's eyes. But in the end, he still failed and didn't find any useful information. Because the black cloaked person was wrapped tightly from head to toe, he couldn't speculate what the black cloaked person was thinking from these things. If Dustless was still willing to believe in his intuition and was willing to believe that he was not wrong, then the black cloaked person's weakness should be this chain. Although he didn't know why it was this chain, as long as he could confirm it, then he didn't have anything to worry about. Therefore, Dustless directly changed his way of attack and slashed at the chain madly. He didn't care about the black-robed man in front of him. After all, Dustless had no other way at this moment. Chapter 1231. The only thing Dustless could do now was to attack the chain madly and open up a way for himself to survive. As for other situations, Dustless didn't want to think about it anymore. He was now focused on entering the battle state. The black-robed man was a little surprised that Dustless would suddenly attack the chain. In such a situation, he directly began to attack in close combat. On the other hand, the chain was attacking from afar. After Dustless saw the black-robed man's action, he felt that his speculation was more reliable. If his guess was wrong, then the black-robed man didn't need to be so agitated. As long as the black-robed man attacked the other chain, it would be more advantageous for the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man didn't do that. In such a situation, it meant one thing. That was, the black-robed man must care about this chain. Although he didn't know what this chain meant to the black-robed man. But he could definitely see the importance of this chain to the black-robed man. He didn't know what was so important about the Dustless line, but in such a situation, it didn't stop him from launching this crazy attack. Even if the other party attacked him in close combat, he would still have the time to attack the chain as hard as he could as long as he was prepared to respond. The gaps on the chain became more and more under Dustless's crazy attacks. It looked a little scary, but Dustless also didn't feel good because he had consumed too much of his energy because of these attacks. In the process of the battle, the black-robed man didn't show any strange situation. It was good that he suddenly felt a little uncertain. However, he knew that he couldn't panic now. There was no turning back for him now. After all, now that he had reached this point, even if the path he took was wrong, he could only brace himself and go on. It was just that he knew that there was no other way. In such a situation, Dustless planned to attack the black-robed man directly with the chain. He wanted to see if the black-robed man was affected by his attack power. If the black-robed man was really affected by his attack on the chain, it meant that the black-robed man's situation was his weakness. Then, he would have to attack the chain crazily, and the black-robed man would have nowhere to hide. So after he thought about these things, he quickly began to act. In the face of such a situation, he pretended to attack the chain, but in fact, he was attacking the black-robed man in front of him. The black-robed man didn't expect that Wu Qin would directly attack him. Then, he attacked himself. His abdomen was directly cut, and his black robe was torn apart. When the black robe was completely exposed in front of Dustless, Dustless also narrowed his eyes and thoroughly saw the black-robed man's situation. There was not a single piece of undamaged flesh on the black-robed man's abdomen. The condition of the black-robed man's body looked very bad, as if he had suffered a serious backlash. The skin on the black-robed man's body was not only in the state of green spots, but also in the state of black spots. It looked very scary. Dustless knew that the black-robed man's condition might be a little serious, but he never thought that the black-robed man's condition would be so serious. It could be seen that the black-robed man's condition had been going on for a long time, and the black-robed man seemed to be speculating that the black-robed man was in pain. These black-robed men should be tormenting him all the time, without a moment of rest. In such a situation, even some people sympathized with the black-robed man. After showing his abdomen, the black-robed man smiled and said while touching the black-robed man's abdomen, "Do you see it? This is the current me, God. I have completely turned into a monster that is neither human nor ghost. Can you believe it? I was once a high and mighty God, a God that was admired by thousands of people. Now, I have completely turned into a monster surrounded by black spots. How can I accept this?" After hearing the other party's words, Wu Chen sighed. It was really a mistake. But to be honest, at that time, after he made a mistake, he directly took control of his problem in front of others. Maybe they could help him find a way to solve this problem. Wu Chen sighed after hearing the other party's words. It was true that he had made a mistake at that time. But he didn't. Instead, he went over there to do research. He tried all kinds of methods to make his injury more serious, but it didn't get better at all. He had already embarked on a path of no return. The most important problem was that he directly accepted the cooperation of others and conducted a series of human experiments. This was completely a heartless thing. After doing it, he definitely couldn't make his body get better. Otherwise, it would be against the harmony of the heavens. Dustless estimated that the black-robed man's body was originally covered in green spots. Later, they slowly turned black and white. This series of process must be due to the black-robed man's experiments. In the face of such a situation, Dustless didn't know how to comment on him. Anyway, he was wrong. Dustless didn't want to comment on him. After all, no matter what, the black-robed man always had his own thoughts. It was quite uncomfortable in his heart, so there was no need for him to ridicule the black-robed man. Under such a situation, the black-robed man sighed and said to Dustless, "Don't worry. Actually, I just wanted you to take photos with me and die together. But in such a situation, I felt that you were safe and sound. Looking at me in a sorry state, I suddenly felt unbalanced. I want to see you in the same situation as me. I want to see you face the same situation as me. I want to know what you will do in this situation." Chapter 1232. After hearing the other party's words, Dustless immediately felt that he was in danger. Facing such a situation, Dustless looked at the other party vigilantly. He wanted to know what the other party was planning to do. In such a situation, Dustless speculated in his heart that it was very likely that the other party wanted to do an experiment on him and then turn him into a monster like him. In this way, it could balance the other party's psychology. Dustless wasn't willing to do this. After all, he had a life in his heart. Why should he let the other party ruin it? Why should he passively follow the other party's wishes? Therefore, Dustless directly showed his resistance and said to the black-robed man in front of him, "If you have the ability, then come at me. If you don't, then you'll have to endure my attacks. I also want to know who is stronger between the two of us, and who will be the final victor." After Wu Chen said this, the black-robed man didn't seem to care much about it. He continued to attack Wu Chen, and his attacks seemed to be more ferocious. At the same time, Wuchen could feel that the black-robed man was indeed injured, which explained one thing. The chain was indeed the black-robed man's weakness. If the chain was injured, the black-robed man would also be injured. However, under such a situation, the black-robed man's injuries weren't that serious. In other words, the black-robed man's body could completely withstand these injuries. Therefore, the black-robed man didn't have any problems with these things. Therefore, in the face of such a situation, the black-robed man was still able to attack him. In such a situation, Dustless looked at the black-robed man vigilantly. He saw the black-robed man attacking him again. This time, the black-robed man didn't use the chain. Instead, he took out a weapon that Dustless had never seen before. When Dustless looked at the weapon again, there was a slight shock in his eyes. He didn't expect such a situation to happen. The moment the weapon appeared, Dustless felt that his previous speculation might be wrong. This weapon was the black-robed man's real lethal weapon. As for the weapon, it was the most important factor that affected the black-robed man. Previously, he said that the black-robed man's weakness was the black-robed man's wrong guess. In such a situation, Dustless directly narrowed his eyes. He was thinking about what he should do now. If the black-robed man could turn the situation around, he would be in a very disadvantageous situation. Dustless went over and saw what kind of weapon was in the other party's hand. It was completely small, but it was a little longer than a dagger. If it was compared to a sword, it was really a little strange. It seemed like a weapon that was deliberately made. When the dagger appeared, the black-robed man seemed to be caressing it very leisurely. However, there was a hint of disgust in his eyes. In the end, his expression was very complicated. In such a situation, Dustless looked at the black-robed man with vigilance. Soon, the black-robed man directly attacked Dustless without any other actions. In such a situation, Dustless directly endured the other party's attack. Under such a situation, the Tang saber also reflected what it felt to Dustless. Master, his weapon is really special. It doesn't feel like an ordinary artifact. As for why it's special, I can't say. However, if it hurts you, then it's very likely that it will cause some problems to your wound. So Master must be careful, don't let it hurt you. In such a situation, Dustless was also very careful and vigilant. He also understood that this was what he should do at this moment. While Dustless was dealing with the black-robed man's attack, he wanted to use this opportunity to let his Tang saber have a head-on collision with the black-robed man's strength. He wanted to see if there would be a good result. In the end, there were many collisions between the black-robed man and the black-robed man. However, the black-robed man's weapon was more powerful. Even after colliding with the black-robed man's Tang saber, there weren't too many injuries. The black-robed man's weapon was still smooth and there weren't any nicks. The relationship between the black-robed man and the black-robed man was very special. In such a situation, the black-robed man's Tang saber was stronger than other artifacts. Therefore, when he used the black-robed man's chain to collide with the black-robed man's weapon, there would be nicks on the chain. But now, when the black-robed man's Tang saber collided with the black-robed man's weapon, there weren't any nicks on the black-robed man's weapon. In such a situation, Dustless sighed. He guessed that the black-robed man's relationship with the black-robed man was very deep. Therefore, even if he wanted to cause damage to the black-robed man, it would be difficult for him to do so. Dustless wouldn't give up so easily. The black-robed man was very surprised when the black-robed man saw that the black-robed man was unscathed. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Dustless. Then, he directly asked Dustless. You're quite special. What's the relationship between the two of you and your divine artifact? Could it be that you have the same relationship as me? This is a bit interesting. After all, when I found my artifact, it could be said to be a forbidden technique. But where did you find it? You are just a new god. But facing such a question, Dustless was thinking about how to answer. He couldn't say that this was his artifact and there was no special situation at all. But in such a situation, the black-robed man wouldn't believe his words. Therefore, in such a situation, Dustless felt that the best thing to do was to remain silent and not say anything. Even if the black-robed man wanted to make a guess, he would just let the black-robed man make a guess. It wasn't a big problem for him. Chapter 1233. Under such circumstances, the black-robed man watched as Dustless fell into silence. He began to speculate about some things about Dustless in his heart, so he continued to interrogate him. Dustless, it seems that you are stronger than I thought. In such a situation, there are still some things that I don't know about. You are really beyond my expectations. That's right. Why don't you tell me something about yourself? If you tell me something nice, maybe I will change my mind. After listening to these words, Dustless was naturally unwilling to believe the black-robed man. After all, in such a situation, even if the black-robed man's words were good, it was very likely that the black-robed man would go back on his words and betray him. Therefore, Dustless didn't dare to believe him at all. The black-robed man in front of him didn't have any of these at all. He didn't give him any responsibility. He only had his own thoughts and interests. After all, he could disregard his identity as a god to make such a deep agreement with a savage. This wasn't a big deal. After all, every god had their own personal preferences. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that the black-robed man in front of him still went astray after discovering the problem. He put himself in danger for a divine artifact and a savage. When he found that there was no turning back, the first thing he thought of was not to ask for other solutions, but to solve this problem himself. Eventually, when things got worse, he would use people and some animals to do experiments. His actions completely showed that he didn't put his identity in his eyes, nor did he put the people in his territory who trusted him in his eyes. He only had himself in his heart. He was a very selfish god. Dustless thought that perhaps the black-robed man in front of him could no longer be considered a god. After all, some of his actions didn't deserve the title of a god. In such a situation, Dustless was also thinking about how to refute the black-robed man and delay him. This way, he could fight for more chances of survival. After thinking for a while, Dustless directly said to the black-robed man in front of him, "I don't have anything else to say. You can be whatever you think of me. After all, you're so smart. You should be able to guess a little about my identity. So, what's the difference if I say it or not? After all, don't you already have guesses in your heart?" After hearing Dustless's words, the black-robed man smiled gently. But in the process of smiling, he still attacked Dustless fiercely. He said that he could chat with Dustless. However, in reality, he still continued to attack Wu Qin. This kind of behavior made it hard for people to believe every word he said. Dustless felt that his strength was constantly being consumed, but in the face of such a situation, he didn't dare to relax. After all, he couldn't let the black-robed man see that he was in a difficult situation. After all, the black-robed man would definitely think of ways to attack him and increase his strength when he was weak. So in such a situation, even if Dustless felt a little tired, he didn't dare to relax because he didn't know what would happen to him if he relaxed. So in such a situation, it was best to be careful. The black-robed man hoped that he didn't show any abnormalities at this moment, but Dustless felt that the black-robed man wasn't feeling that good either. At this moment, he also felt some pressure in his heart. The battle between the two sides had been constantly colliding. In such a situation, Dustless was still in a disadvantageous position. The situation wasn't very optimistic. Faced with such a situation, the black-robed man could only execute a move with greater strength. In an instant, the divine weapons in his hands were aimed at Dustless at the same time. This attack required the chain to lock Dustless's range of existence, then continue to use other weapons to block other hiding routes. Finally, the black-robed man would launch the final attack himself. Dustless also noticed the black-robed man's intention. He wanted to dodge, but in the end, he couldn't succeed. Such a situation gave Dustless a headache. The black-robed man's attack this time was obviously ruthless. It was to injure Shi Yan in such a situation. There was really no other way. When the pure power erupted, Dustless had nowhere to hide. He could only be forced to be locked by her. In the end, Dustless could feel another dagger directly entering his heart. At that moment, he seemed to feel a huge pressure from his heart. At this moment, his body was still very uncomfortable. The pain in his heart and the domineering power began to spread from his heart. In such a situation, Dustless felt as if a steady stream of demon chi was pouring into his body. His pupils were a little shaken and unfocused. He stared straight at the black-robed man in front of him. Dustless now knew what the black-robed man's intention was. The black-robed man wanted to turn him into a monster that was neither human nor ghost. Dustless wanted to resist and use the pure power of faith in his body to resist, but the effect was still a little weak. This made Dustless feel a little heartache. Because his power of faith seemed to be directly locked, he couldn't use it well. Under such a situation, he couldn't resist the black-robed man very well. The black-robed man looked at Dustless and said with a smile, "I advise you not to waste your efforts. The older the ginger, the spicier it is. If you want to play with me, then I can only say that you are not very good at it. In the process of fighting with you, I've already secretly done something." Chapter 1234. After Dustless heard these words, he was very surprised. He didn't expect that the other party would still be able to do something to his body under the intense collision between weapons. He didn't expect this at all. Dustless wanted to say something, but he was already surrounded by pain all over his body. Even if he wanted to say something, it was still an unbearable situation. Such a situation also made him very distressed. At this moment, the black-robed man also increased the strength of his hands. In such a situation, he directly continued to speak to Dustless. "I know that you have a lot of speculations about me in your heart. I also know that in such a situation, you may think that I didn't do a good job. You may think that I'm incompetent, but you can't deny my previous achievements because of what I'm doing now." At this moment, Dustless had already felt that the demon aura in his body was in a very bad situation. It was sweeping around and destroying everything around him. These things made Dustless feel pain. His entire body at this moment felt that the bad power began to spread directly to his limbs. Dustless could clearly hear what the black-robed man was saying, because every time he was distracted, the other party would always inject demon aura into his body and cause him excessive damage, causing him to instantly wake up due to the pain. Facing such a situation, Dustless didn't know what to say for a while. He could only say that the other party was cruel and made him go through all this. Under such a situation, the black-robed man in front of him spoke to Dustless instead. "It's painful, right? I was also in great pain back then. After experiencing all these things and situations, I don't feel any regret. After all, no matter what, I feel that even if I were to go back in time, I would still do the same." At this moment, Wu Chen's strength began to dissipate slowly. His whole body was in a state of powerlessness, which made people feel helpless. Dustless could only slowly listen to the black-robed man's words in his ear. He knew that the black-robed man was admiring him losing his vitality bit by bit under such a situation. His body was completely occupied by demon aura bit by bit. "I want to look at you carefully. I want to see your current situation and the changes that are happening to you at this moment because I'm really curious about you. I really want to know what's so special about you. You're different from other people. I've already noticed this a long time ago. In such a situation, I've always wanted to know what's so special about you, but I didn't have the chance to study it. After hearing these words, Dustless couldn't help but laugh at the black-robed man in his heart. You want to explore the mysteries of my body. How can it be so simple? After all, the mysteries of my body shouldn't be fully explored by anyone in this world. Therefore, Dustless didn't panic at all. Dustless didn't say these words out loud. After all, he was now unable to speak because of the power in his body. Another reason was that under such a situation, he didn't know how to explain it to the black-robed man. Sometimes, the black-robed man might not necessarily believe what he said, because sometimes it was really too unbelievable. In April, Dustless wouldn't reveal his secret, he would only hide it in his heart. The black-robed man didn't expect Dustless to respond in such a situation, so he just made his own guesses bit by bit. Then, he looked at the black demon aura spreading continuously on Dustless's body. At this moment, Dustless felt that his body no longer belonged to him. It was as if he had become someone else. In such a situation, it was very bad. Dustless was now thinking. If he wasn't so confident at that time, if he returned to that moment, would his situation be different now? However, after thinking about these possibilities, Dustless quickly stopped thinking about them because they were completely meaningless. The black-robed man admired the demonization of Dustless's body bit by bit. When Dustless's body was completely demonized, only his head was left. The black-robed man laughed. The black-robed man carefully looked at Dustless's body that was wrapped in demon aura. It was he who once again ridiculed him. You can't imagine it now, can you? Your entire body is now wrapped in demonic chi, just like how you saw me in my other state. However, I reckon that you probably can't imagine it either. It's really a pity. Dustless couldn't know what he looked like now, but in fact, he could imagine it. After all, it wasn't like he hadn't seen this situation before. Dustless felt that his body no longer belonged to him. He was completely numb. In the face of such a situation, Dustless was thinking about what he should do next. If his body was demonized and he really became like the black-robed man, then what should he do? Should he just sit there and wait for death? Then he would definitely not be reconciled. He wouldn't just sit there and wait to be captured. If his body really encountered those changes and provoked those stimuli, then under such circumstances, he would definitely lose everything and hand over everything to those powerful masked gods. Then in such a situation, he would let them see if they could think of a way for him. If they couldn't and wanted to hurt him, then he would think of other ways to deal with it. Chapter 1235. Kurosaki Ichigo and the rest were shocked and angry. Dustless didn't treat them as humans at all. It was like watching a monkey perform. How could they not be angry? Wuchen simply treated them as animals to please. What kind of humiliation was this? Everyone, let's attack together. Anyway, this guy has already shed all pretense of cordiality. He won't let us go easily. Ishida Yulong's 2 arms were like black holes, attracting a large amount of Reiki. In an instant, the Reiki condensed into a crystal-clear bow and arrow. Moreover, there were countless arrows that emitted cold light. Really? It's this kind of weak attack again. Who do you think I am? Dustless curled his lips in disdain. In an instant, he became dispirited. Originally, he wanted to play with this group of people. However, when he saw such a weak attack, his interest disappeared. You, this, bastard, Ishida Yulong was choked by Dustless's words. This could be said to be one of his most powerful moves. However, Dustless's sloppy attitude didn't respect him at all. This was a disguised form of belittling and naked contempt. Whoosh! Whoosh! Tens of thousands of bows and arrows shot out in unison. There was no way to dodge, no way to escape. Boom! 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 The moment they came into contact with Dustless's body, the arrows flashed brightly. It was as if they had come to the surface of the sun in an instant. Then, the earth shook and the mountains shook. The intense explosion eroded the body. Even the captain was seriously injured. Success! Inoue Orihime cried with joy. Dustless gave her a fatal pressure. It was extremely difficult for her to breathe. Every second that Dustless lived in this world, her spirit was on the verge of collapse. Ha, success! Are you kidding me? Find out what kind of mission is in front of you. The large cluster of flames disappeared, revealing Dustless's body. His whole body was still burning in flames. However, his voice came from the flames, indicating that he was fine. The scene was extremely terrifying. It was enough to shock anyone. Dustless's head was still burning in flames, but he was completely fine. The most shocking thing was that Dustless, whose head was burning in flames, often had a teasing smile on his face. All of you, get out of the way. Leave this guy to me. T-Tiger stepped in front of Ishida Yulong and Inoue Orihime. A strange arm extended from his right arm. It was strange and filled with a special evil aura. This power, it seems like the power of Su. You, a mere human, can cross the boundary of race and obtain the power of Su. Not bad, worthy of praise. But that's all. Dustless glanced at Tiger in surprise. Then, he became calm again. When he looked at Tiger again, he found that the guy had disappeared. I didn't tell you to start and you attacked without permission. Where are your morals? Dustless looked around and complained. You don't know how to follow the rules at all. Boom boom boom, the back of Dustless's head trembled. A strong and powerful fist hit Dustless. Because the power was too strong, the air was filled with the danger of suffocation. Oh. I gave you a chance to sneak attack, but your performance is too troublesome. Dustless turned his head and glanced at T-Tiger behind him. His Zanpakuto swept out. Your performance is over. I don't have much time. It's time to change. The weak cold light turned into an overbearing slash, and T-Tiger was easily destroyed by the explosive force. Poochie. A living person was cut in half by Dustless. Tiger. The mournful scream made people twitch. Looking closely, it was Inoue Orihime and Ishida Yuryu with red eyes. Of course, there was also Shinozaki Ichigo. But even a cheat has its limits. Against Dustless, Shinozaki Ichigo was destined to die here. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black crescent moonlight was slanted, and the places it passed by were dead silent. Under this destructive momentum, everything that blocked it was as fragile as snow. Getsuga Tensho. The black moonlight magnified again, covering the layers of void, tearing a huge crack visible to the naked eye. Instead of calling it a slash, it was more like a crescent moon-shaped black hole attacking. Because everywhere Shinozaki Ichigo slashed, everything turned into fragments, revealing the abyss of the universe. Yawn. Yawning lazily, Dustless gradually became sleepy. He said impatiently, Shinozaki Ichigo, let's end the grudges of the past today. Although I killed your parents, your friends, and will kill you soon, your two sisters and I have no grudges. So let me help you take care of them. Poochie. Hearing this, Shinozaki Ichigo's lungs churned, and he spat out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. He glared at Dustless with fire in his eyes and shouted angrily, My parents are yours, you bastard. Some people like to die, so I can only reluctantly send them off. Wu Che shrugged helplessly. Then, his gaze fell on Ishida Yuryu, and he said bluntly, "Your father too. I found him an eyesore, so I sent him to heaven to meet his deceased wife. The two of you should thank me properly." Shinozaki Ichigo and Ishida Yuryu were trembling with anger. Their eyes turned red, and they were filled with violent hostility. Their murderous gazes were locked on Dushless. TSK, I sent your father to heaven to meet his deceased wife, and they were happy. But you two bastards actually pointed your swords at me. You're worse than pigs and dogs. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.